Good morning, everyone. I'd like to encourage folks to take their seats. We'll get started in just a moment. Okay, everyone, I'm going to get started. Good morning and welcome to the first Research, Translation, and Commercialization Symposium. I'm saying first because we hope that this will become a more regular event. Sorry? Oh. Rob, I have no mic. Testing? No, not yet. All right, we're in business. All right. Take two. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the first Research, Translation, Commercialization Symposium. And I'm saying first because we hope that this will be start of a more regular event to encourage people to think about commercializing and translating their research, moving it forward, and featuring different speakers each time to bring different perspectives to help you in that path. My name is Mike Schubert. I'm the Executive Director of Research here at St-Boniface Hospital, as well as a professor in the Department of Physiology and Pathophysiology in the Rady Faculty of Health Sciences. And it's my pleasure to welcome you to here today. I'd like to start by acknowledging that we are in Treaty 1 territory of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Oji, Cree, Dakota, and Dene peoples, and on the homeland of the Red River Métis. We also source our water from Shoal Lake 40, and we gather in a spirit of reconciliation, which is really particularly important when we think about a lot of the translational impact of the work that we do here and the potential that it has for helping particularly underserved communities in our country. Nicole Amino, the President and CEO of St. Boniface Hospital, is unfortunately unable to attend today, but she did send along some remarks, and I'd like to share those with you right now. Bonjour, good morning. As the President and CEO of St. Boniface Hospital and Research Enterprise, it is my pleasure to extend a warm welcome to all the Intellectual Property and Commercialization Symposium participants. St. Boniface Hospital has had a long and rewarding history of being involved in the translation of research. We have been and continue to be intensively involved in all stages of research, innovation, and development. Beyond the discovery stage, though, it is important that we continue to capture the value of our activities through implementation that includes the translation and commercialization of research. Why the focus on translation and commercialization? The answer is simple. We are a hospital that fully understands how essential it is that we offer the very best methods, procedures, drugs, devices, biologics, and foods to our patients. For that, we need our basic research to translate into these deliverables in the healthcare that we provide. It means that we need to inspire and support commercialization initiatives to improve delivery and address existing and emerging healthcare needs, but we cannot do this alone. We recognize that this is best accomplished with essential partnerships, especially in the generation of intellectual property and in the approval and commercialization of therapeutic products. At St. Boniface, we are acutely cognizant of the value of having robust intellectual property and translational programs. I will leave you with a simple fact. In conjunction with partners, St. Boniface Hospital has assisted in the translational investigation, conduct, and reviews of literally thousands of therapeutic products. Many of these products are routinely being used in the clinic globally. We are proud of the research, both basic and clinical, that our scientists conduct. We have made new discoveries and contributed to bringing medicinal products, devices, and services to market for the benefit of our community and well beyond. As such, commercialization is one of our strategic priorities. Along with our board of directors, I am pleased that we are looking at research from the lens of return on investment and welcome everyone here today to work together in that regard. I hope that you have an engaging and productive symposium. Thank you. The research enterprise at St. Boniface Hospital is the result of a thriving and successful partnership between St. Boniface Hospital, the University of Manitoba, and Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada. It's been the source of biomedical discovery for over 38 years, generating thousands of papers, contributing to the mentorship and training of hundreds of individuals, developing numerous spin-offs, and it is supported by the St. Boniface Hospital Foundation and many partners, generating an economic activity well north of $10 million per year. This partnership works because of a shared vision and dedication to a common cause. That scientific discovery is not just important, it is necessary if we are to solve the many challenges facing our country and our society. Scientific discovery has always been supported by a compact or an agreement between the public and researchers. That support of our work is predicated on the idea of benefit to society down the road. This is true during the Renaissance, when wealthy patrons would sponsor the efforts of individual artists and builders and creators and scientists. And today we continue to do that through shared investment by government, charitable organizations, and donors. And ultimately, we must remember that the public is behind all of this support that we reap. Therefore, the translation of research, including commercialization, is a means to deliver on that promise of societal benefit. Every grant and award application usually starts with a description of the medicinal problem to be solved and outlines how the project will address that gap. But often these projects are oriented towards future discoveries. This is going to help things that are going to come down the road. Discovering a compound that kills cancer cells, that repairs neurons, that protects cardiac muscle cells, or that improves tissue healing is important research and is the kind of work to which many of us have dedicated our careers. But the true test of impact is failed if we do not actually contribute these ideas towards improving the outcomes of patients. Here, our partnership is further strongly aligned in these ideas between the hospital, the university, and AAFC. We all have foundational documents such as strategic plans, mission and vision statements, and the like that describe the importance of translating and commercializing our research. Intellectual property takes many forms. It may include drugs or biologics, tests and diagnostics, devices, functional foods, but also processes, new ways of doing things, new ways of making things, new ways of thinking about things. Could even be an app. This is a long path, and I hope that you will enjoy today's symposium and gain some knowledge that will help you on your own path as you move forward. And I'd like to welcome you warmly today. So that takes us right into the program itself. We have a slate of 5 speakers today that are going to tell you a number of different perspectives. Really, this is aimed at folks that are either just starting the idea of what might I do with the commercialization of my work? How do I translate this? You may have already started. You may be thinking, you may have said, this is something I'm interested in, but I really don't know where to start. And I'm hoping that today you'll gain some insight and ideas as to how you can learn and start on that pathway yourself. So our first speaker is Dr. Mario Pinto, who's the Vice President, Research and International at the University of Manitoba. His portfolio covers both core research support and the translation and commercialization of ideas, and he's been in his position since October of 2022. He trained as a chemical biologist at Queen's University and has published more than 250 papers in his field. He's the former president of NSERC and the former deputy vice chancellor of research at Griffith University in Brisbane, Australia. He's also the former vice president of research and chair of chemistry at Simon Fraser, and is a fellow of the Royal Society of Canada. He's the founding member, or one of the founding members, of the Centre for Drug Research and Development Zone Startups India, Venture Labs, and Venture Connection. And as director of the Health and Knowledge Precinct in the Gold Coast in Australia, he partnered with numerous hospitals and levels of government to foster partnerships between university and hospital researchers and commercial entities. Exactly the kinds of things that we're talking about now. Clearly, he has a tremendous wealth of experience as a researcher, an innovator, and an administrator in moving ideas to action. And he has recently directed the development of the University of Manitoba Strategic Research Plan 2024 to 2029, and which he's going to speak with us about today. So, Dr. Pinto. Absolutely.
Is there a pointer? Well, thanks very much, Mike. And thank you all for coming. To those of you online, welcome. Let me take it back to basics, right? And we'll talk about the commercialization pathways later, and my colleague Lauren will give you a bird's eye view of the actual operations. But what I want to do is go back to the beginning, and in order to do that, I have to take you to the strategic research plan. Right? This took us a year of consultation to bring it together, but I can tell you that the basic premise is the following. To combine, before I go there, to combine different disciplines and different ideas in imaginative configurations to do something different and to do something special. We don't want to do anything ordinary. We want to do things that are bold, that will define the University of Manitoba and St-Boniface. So how do you do that? Well, you just throw away conventional disciplines and conventional thinking, and you bring together whoever you need to bring together to solve a problem. I helped build the Health Innovation Precinct on the Gold Coast in Australia. So bringing together engineers with cardiologists, for example, engineers studying flow dynamics to design a new artificial heart was a reality, right? Bringing together computing scientists to work on spinal cord repair was a reality because we were using digital twins of each patient and also virtual reality to help them to gain mobility. We have, at the moment, and we had when I left, several paraplegics pedaling bicycles. And very recently, we had the 5th heart transplant, both in clinical trials, right, of a new artificial heart. How did that come about? Well, it came about because of throwing away the traditional boundaries and bringing together people to work on different problems. So it is a reality. That's what we hope to do here. So with that in mind, we sat back and decided on what the strengths were at University of Manitoba, and they're quite broad, as you will see. You could drive a truck through these. Anyone can fit in. But health and well-being is the main thematic area for all of you. But I emphasize that the idea is to cross barriers between all of these themes and not to be confined by the health and well-being theme. This comes about from the concept of two-eyed seeing put forward by Mi'kmaq elder Albert Marshall, in which he advocated for bringing in two views, the indigenous view with one eye and the Western perspective with another eye, synthesizing those two views to do something very special. What people didn't realize, and Albert emphasized, was that it was at this frustrated interface that true innovation will occur. It's not going to be easy. Right? So the basis of our strategic plan was to build on Albert's idea and to look at multi-eyed seeing and to bring together different views to do something special, as I said. We will provide for you the 4 Ps, right? People, that's what makes it all work, right? We have to recruit well. We have to support these people well. We have to make sure that we have high caliber graduate students. These are the lifeblood of a research intensive university. And if we don't have that, there's no point talking. We have to have high caliber faculty, right? Who have sufficient time protected for research so that they can make things happen. As I've said, we believe in partnerships so that you don't try and go it alone. The timeline is far too long, and I'm getting very old. So if you want to make things happen, you bring together different expertise, right? So we will build the partnerships with you. I've set up the Major Projects Office, and they are working with many of you already to ask crazy questions, right? Can you bring together a surgeon with a mathematician? Why not, right? And so we will help you build partnerships. Platforms, infrastructure is critical. We're very involved in identifying opportunities so that we can build out our infrastructure. And processes, we're not quite working like a Swiss clock yet. I inherited a lot of baggage, so I'm gradually working through this bureaucratic nightmare is the only word I can use to streamline some of our processes. But we're not quite there yet. I must say, though, in going forward, that our relationship with st-Boniface is the best of all relationships with our research affiliates. That may seem hard for you to believe, but that's the reality. Okay? And I'd be happy to go into that later on after this session. But we're working well together. Let me tell you about some of these stats, right? Because I think it's important. I'm a numbers guy. And the first thing I did, even when I was in Australia, before I accepted the position at was to look at the numbers. So one of our issues, as I looked at it, was our participation and success rates in tri-agency grants. For those of you who don't know, there are 3 granting agencies: Canada Institutes for Health Research, Social Sciences and Humanities Research, and the Natural Sciences Engineering Research Council of Canada. I was the president of the last one. A measure of research intensity of a university in Canada is dictated and measured by our participation and success in tri-agency grants. And you'll see here that it ain't brilliant, right? So I started at the end of 2022. So you'll see in 22, 23, all the grants had already been submitted. Only 396 total applications, 50% hit rate, 199 faculty holding grants. Look at the red line on top. We have 1,679 faculty. Of those, only 854 held at least one tri-agency grant in the last 5 years, 51%. Okay, so we have room to grow. I'm the eternal optimist. And so I said, all right, we have room to grow. We've been working like mad through the MPO and through individual efforts to convince people to participate, to develop competitive grants. So a lot of mentoring, filling gaps, bringing together different combinations, as I said. And you'll see that in 23-24, we had more grants submitted, 514, still a 50% hit rate, but more people in the game. And that is the game. So where are we in total revenue? Look at the last set of bars, 23-24, combining CIHR, SSHRC, and NSERC, only 50.5 million. For a research-intensive university, we should all hang our heads. Okay, but I'm not a defeatist, and as I said, I'm an optimist. So we're going to work very hard to correct this and to get greater participation. So before I came here, I realized we were in trouble. And I walked into the president's office during the interview and I said, this is what I'm going to do. Are you with me or not? Because if you're not with me, I'm not interested. Okay. And by with me, I emphasize that we have a lot of work to do in the tri-agency space, but we're going to need a plan B. Otherwise, we're going to be history. And that plan B was to diversify funding sources, to tap into foundations, to tap into industry, and this is where you come in today's colloquium, and to really diversify to make up that deficit. And so that's what we've done. Look at the bars, right? From all those efforts for diversification in the blue, 57% of our funding now comes from those efforts. The provincial investment is abysmal, only 5%. And as I've shown you, the federal investment is only 38%. Again, work to be done. But look at the numbers, the plan's working. If you look at 22-23, 210 million, we're stuck there. 23-24, 246 million. This is our new data. We've just had these enumerated, but I'm telling you, 24-25 is our year. We've really pulled it together. You're going to see a number that's going to blow your mind. So, but it took a lot of work, and I compliment all the faculty who have risen to the occasion, because it all comes down to faculty. We couldn't have done it, right? We can talk all we want. We can bring imaginative combinations together, but without the faculty who are willing to do this, we don't go very far. So we're on a good trajectory, and that's the message I want you to take away. We're building for the future. So there's a lot of misconception and misinformation about indirect costs and research support funds. So let me just get that out of the way right away. If you look at this blue sector, all of the overhead costs from that blue sector go directly to the faculties. I retain 0% at the center. So when people come to me asking for things, you should know I have no money, because the policy says 100% goes to the faculty deans. Of that 100%, the inventor gets 25% and the dean keeps 75% to invest wisely in different initiatives. For example, your core facilities. But this decentralized model does present a problem for strategic investment at the center for me. But the faculty deans have that opportunity, and they can do as they please. Let's look at the federal bit, 38%. The indirect costs come in the form of what we call research support funds, and they're split as follows. Most of it goes into renovations, equipment upgrades, that's 55%. Again, that's in the faculties. That's not for central resources. The red sector, salaries and benefits, again, in your faculties and for some other central units. And most of my operation, the VPRI staff are on this soft money, 22%. I have 19.5 FTEs on soft money. So this is a great vulnerability, but that's okay. I come from the school of hard knocks, and I believe and I have always worked for my money. But you should know that most of the monies, again, even from the RSF, go to the faculties. Okay. So let's look at the real situation in terms of number of researchers. So these are assistant, associate, and full profs. I told you there was 1696. This is the distribution. We have 17 colleges and faculties. I don't know of any organization in the world that has 17 colleges and faculties. But it is what it is. This is what I inherited. So you'll see that the largest slice is in medicine, right? 774 of that, 621, and I'm counting Jude, that's the one, in as a GFT appointment, right? So 621 are GFTs, the rest are alpha. But that's the largest slice of faculty. Faculty of Arts is about 200, 199. Faculty of Science, 144. Faculty of Environment only has 37. And Agriculture has about 5%. So 80, whatever that is, 83. Okay. So that's the number of soldiers that I have to work with if they were all research active, right? So let me just point something out with these numbers. The average short grant is exactly the same as the average NSERC grant. It costs the same amount to feed a graduate student in history as in engineering. If every faculty member had one fundamental discovery grant, operating grant from CIHR, or inside grant from SHRC, the Faculty of Arts will bring in 10 million. The Faculty of Science will bring in 7 million. The College of Medicine would bring in 160 million just from CIHR. But you don't. As I showed you, our total take is only 50.5 million. So there's work to do here. So the challenge is to get everyone participating. The success rate at CIHR in the last competition was 17%, but still we can play. You'll know that the only bill that was passed before the House rose, 3 days before the House rose in a night session, was our bill. And thank goodness the Speaker of the House, Greg Fergus, who's a friend, halted the filibuster to vote on one bill. And that bill contained our money. So the tri-agencies have just received $60 million extra in base. So it's important that we compete for those dollars. And I'm counting on all of you to really pick up the game on CIHR applications. And we'll get there. But let's look at the real numbers. In terms of total revenue, College of Medicine, Faculty of Health Sciences brings in 74% of the total revenue at UM. Consequently, you have most of the overhead and most of the RSF monies. So you can do a lot, right? The world is your oyster here. Agriculture is next. They're doing very well, but they have with 87 faculty. Science, given the faculty complement, is not doing that well. But environment, with only 37 faculty, is doing all right. So you have to look at denominators as well in all this exercise. Faculty of Arts, I said they have close to 200 members, is only bringing in 3.5 million. So work to do there as well. Okay. So, as I said, I'm a numbers guy. And so that's one of the first things I did before I came here. Impact is what I really look at, because I'm not so, keen on money, but are we making an impact? Does it matter? Are we training good graduate students? Are the discoveries important? Are they being translated, if appropriate? Right? So I'm focusing on impact. But let me show you some exciting stories, just to show you that we're doing well in your space. So let's talk about viruses. Combining talents from health sciences and science. This is the team. This was our biggest score for University of Manitoba, 57 million for 2 buildings, a level 3 facility, which will be at the Bannatyne campus, and a vaccine accelerator facility at the Fort Garry campus. Okay, 57 million with matching, that takes us to 83 million. So it's the largest initiative ever funded. But here is the combination of talents I was talking about, bringing together different people and even going outside the university. The co-PI, Maya, is from the University of Alberta, right? And those combos are very important, right? So this we call CBRF, BRIF. Don't worry about the acronyms, but we're driving discovery and development of a vaccine platform. We've chosen H5N1, the avian flu, as our first target. And it's a big concern, of course, as you know, in animals and also now very soon to be in humans. But that's our front runner for testing our vector platform for vaccines. Okay, so that's in the space of health sciences. The buildings, we will have a level 3 facility for studying animals. This is huge, right? So that will go at Bannatyne, and the accelerator will go at Fort Garry. So it costs a lot of money, costs a lot of planning. has never done this before, so teething pains getting my colleagues to come to terms with what has to be done in terms of research buildings. I did several of these at Simon Fraser University, but it's not in the culture here. So work in progress, but we intend to have many more successes. We just submitted 6 competitive CFI applications. We pared that down from 16, and we brought people together in combinations to put different people together, right? Because going it alone is a mug's game. So that was our bet. And then our major projects officer really worked with ORS, Office of Research Services, to optimize these applications. So I'm very hopeful, right, that of these applications that we've submitted, we applied for 30 million from CFI. That will require 30 million match from the province. I've already told 3 ministers that. But look at the areas, biomedical innovation, some of your researchers are involved in that. Pandemic preparedness, some of your researchers are involved in that. Neurodisorders and injury, right? By Cowley, pardon me. I think this with Siddiqui, I think is a very hot prospect here. So I think we have something very special to offer in different areas, and I'm very optimistic. Now I'm counting on a 30% success rate, which is natural. So that's 9 million. So I've asked the province for 9 million matching. But it's a very good sign, because remember that whatever we put forward, we can use these applications for other purposes. Right? Multiomics at scale. Here's where we're going to make a mark. Analysis of proteins of an individual, all your proteins of an individual, right? And your genome map of an individual at scale. That's where the action is. That's where we've come. The instrument at the top right is the latest technology of mass spectrometry, great time of flight, but a very special time of flight. I had 6 mass spectrometers when I left SFU, and they filled half this room. And look at that, it's a benchtop, right? Which does much more than all my instruments did. And so handheld diagnostics is on the left, but this is the team we put together. Cheryl Greenberg, whom you know and love, working with Ethan Zavoilis, our new recruit in bioinformatics, who's at Cancer Care Manitoba as well. Just a tremendous addition. Renee Zaidi, you also know well in proteomics, partnering with Christoph Borchers, one of my former collaborators at McGill. And this is a project that's just been funded through Genome Canada. So 6.8 million, something in that ballpark. Right? So we're playing in spaces where we should be playing, right? Bringing together different expertise and not going it alone. We've decided to carve out different niches for ourselves that are different from anybody else. So one of the themes is health and humanities. Why not, right? So this project is led by a historian, Ethel Jones. Why not, right? Attitudes to vaccines, very important. And she's joined by healthcare researchers, right? Julie Lajoie, Marisa Becker, and a vaccinologist in the Faculty of Science, Peter Pelka, who led the CBRF proposal. But health and humanities, we just submitted a $2 million grant to CIHR. Okay. One of your own, all right? This is Lori. Health, you've heard of pigs in space. Well, why not heart health in space, right? And something I didn't know, that the shape of a heart changes from football or elliptical to soccer ball type morphology, right? But this is very important because it's connected to circadian rhythms. Apparently, people are doing shift work, have a 30% greater risk of heart disease. I didn't know that till Lori told me that, right? Microgravity plays a large role in a variety of biological functions, right? And apparently, from what Laurie told me this morning, not just with humans and animals, but also with plants. So lots of work to do. We have the distinction of having Laurie being invited to NASA, right, with his colleague and being welcomed to discuss details of this program going forward. So we're on the edge. We're pushing the frontiers, right? So well done, Laurie. Digital twins, something I did in Australia. Every patient had a digital twin or 3D printed image. Did you know that every aneurysm is different? And so we would scan in the ambulance, and I set up 3 companies, right? And that scan was shipped to the hospital before the ambulance got to the hospital, right? Those were then in turn shipped to the doctor who was asleep in bed, forced to get out of bed and do a rapid analysis. We would scan as soon as they got to the hospital and then 3D print each aneurysm. The surgeons would then practice on removal of those aneurysms on our 3D print before they went in for operation. So I set up the Center for Spatial Imaging in the Gold Coast precinct, and they went so far, the surgeons got very cocky, and they started doing these operations robotically. So they were operating in Vietnam or northern Queensland. Right? So there's a lot that can be done. Right? But imagine going back to the digital twin approach and bringing that as one of the key technologies here. I've shown you other images here to show you that we've taken this philosophy and paradigm and expanded it to remapping Manitoba and the Winnipeg railway system. And you'll soon hear about this. We're working with Lloyd Axworthy. You'll recognize that from the past, but I was just with him last night. And we'll be remapping everything using digital twins and looking at different factors like supply chains, building on permafrost, how these withstand train cars, taking the curbs, for example. But this is a fantastic opportunity. But it all started with digital twinning of patients. So our motto at the Gold Coast was never in the patient for the first time. And that's what I would like to see here. Okay. We started multi-site clinical trials, and I'm not going to go through these in detail. I just list some of them because we're finally in this space. Huge, huge problems, right? As you know, dealing with the delays in the system. We have to do better, and we're working with Shared Health to make that more streamlined. The entire clinical trial culture has to become mainstream. I ran the clinical trials unit on the Gold Coast. We started very small with industrial clients. Sanofi, our initial grant, was a few $100,000, but they very recently invested $278 million. So this is serious business, right? If you do it right. And I know we're going to hear about some promising technologies later on. I show here 4 other clinical trials. There are many others, but these are our front runners, I would say. Lots of teething pains, as Richard Kaiser will tell you, with monitoring, as Ryan Brzezinski would tell you. I had to shut one trial down. You should also know that. We have compliance issues, and I'm not going to put up with that because there are liabilities involved, and indemnification of faculty is critical, right? And you may wonder why we go through all these machinations with some of your faculty. Well, they have joint appointments at for the indemnification, and I take that very seriously. Okay, enough of that. So how are we doing? One of the things I told Michael when I joined was, we're going to have to do much better on research awards, right? And we're going to have to push for international awards. So just focus on 22, 23, going to 23, 24. You see the shift, right? We're going slowly to more awards submitted, but we're shifting the mix to international and national. And I think that's the space we want to play in. And I'll end with one slide on where we are on commercialization, right? First of all, if you concentrate 22, 23 and look at the yellow bar and the green bar shows the invention disclosures coming at us from different faculty. And when I joined, I told Darrell, who was in charge of what is now called PKMI and now taken over by Lauren, that this is absurd. We've got to start being more selective at the front end. We've got to exercise due diligence and only concentrate on technologies that have a chance, right? And so you'll notice in 23, 24, we've culled the number of invention disclosures that we're willing to look at, but you'll also notice that that is just about equal to the US patents filed. So that's where the rigor comes in. And if you're interested in commercialization, there has to be rigor at the front end. The critical go, no go experiments, right? Professional CEOs and professional boards of directors, if you want to set up a startup company. The worst thing is to have an academic running a company as a CEO. It's usually the kiss of death, having done all this before. But I'll draw your attention finally to the total revenue from royalties. It's about $1 million in 23, 24. So we should stop beating ourselves up about not having any commercialization activity. We should just work harder to have more candidates enter the pipeline. So thank you very much. I know I've gone on for far too long, but thanks, Mike, for the opportunity. And I'll be happy to answer questions either now or later. Thank you.
We'll actually have the opportunity for questions in a question and answer session after the speakers have completed later this morning. So thank you very much, Dr. Pinto, for an outstanding presentation. Some of those numbers I learned for the first time. It is really exciting to see, and I hope that was informative to everyone. I would like to next introduce our second speaker, Dr. Bram Ramjawan, who I've known for well over 30 years and who did his training here, went away for a little while, and then we recruited him back. He was previously with the NRC as Industrial Technology Advisor who specialized in life sciences and biomedical technologies. Here he wears three hats. He's the Director of Research at the Asper Clinical Research Institute. He oversees the Office of Clinical Research, and he's the Director of Research Innovation Regulatory Affairs. It is a very broad portfolio, but tied together a lot in the idea of translation of studies into the commercialization space. He's an adjunct professor of pharmacology and therapeutics, and his research program focuses on precision detection methods for early tumor detection, metabolites, and immunoglobulins. He also conducts a series of fee-for-service tasks every year. In his various roles, he oversees all clinical research on site and ensures that all clinical, regulatory, and business issues are handled according to the highest standards of national and international agencies, whether they're granting or compliance agencies. He's on the steering committee of the Canadian Standards Association on Medical Technology and Healthcare and is a fellow of the Canadian Association of Health Sciences, which is an extremely high honor to Canadian researchers to be appointed to that. He is a reviewer for the U.S. National Institutes of Health and for the European Union Commission on Health Science and Ethics. And in fact, he is frequently in the EU because his expertise is sought there on a regular basis. I'm not sure how many times per year you go there, Bram, but it's got to be 3 or 4 at this point. He is a judge and a reviewer for numerous international biomedical businesses. He received the Government of Canada Innovation Award for 18 consecutive years. And he is currently developing our translation and commercialization policy here at St-Boniface Hospital. Bram, it's a pleasure to welcome you.
Thanks very much, Mike. Mike forgot to say we're friends as well. I want to begin by just following up on 2 things that Mario said, because I'm not sure we'll have the opportunity. One is, as Mario said, St. Boniface, the university enjoys the relationship with St. Boniface, but it's both ways. And a lot of people, you're in a building that's 35 years where the relationship was strengthened, but actually our relations go back for over 100 years when we had a first formal agreement, which was re-signed again in 1906. And Robert, is there a, okay. Oh, and the second item, Mario, which I don't necessarily agree with you. I don't encourage anybody here to go into the president's office and say, you're with me or you're without me, because it's not going to fly in our situation. That's a joke. Listen, I'm talking about translation, commercialization activity on this campus. Mario gave a fantastic overview of what's going on at the U of M. Recognizing we're an affiliate of the university, there are lots of things we do together. You'll see, especially as it relates to intellectual property. And by the way, the relationship has been the best that it's ever been in the last 20 years since I was around. And it's getting better. But this is more St-Boniface centric. We show you areas of commonalities, but there are some areas of differences. There are people in the audience that are not affiliated with the university in any way, shape, or form. So we're in the process, as Mike said, in developing our commercialization plan and policy, and it has to apply to everybody. So by the way of disclosure, I'm involved in a whole bunch of things, academic and non-academic, for this audience today. I know Lauren was going to be here, so I had to quickly adjust this slide. There are the last bottom ones there. You'll see Neuroptic, Preg Ease, Universal Ibogaine, and Sensible Technologies, which is your technology, advisory position. For our purpose today, there's absolutely no disclosure, no conflicts of interest, just serve as advisory component for those early phase spin-offs, except for Universal Ibogaine, which are seasoned business guys in this province. I want to leave you today with addressing four objectives, very simple stuff. Brief overview of IP translational activities at St. Boniface, St. Boniface position on intellectual property, translation, and then commercialization. And then I want to talk about some insights on how to increase our activities in this area. So there's probably only like 4 real take-home slides. What's the driving force? Is this stuff important? Why are we interested in this? This is one of the critical slide, and I can identify 6 reasons. 1, it provides a legal mechanism to protect results of research. You all know that. 2, it's an incentivization program that furthers innovation by allowing researchers to commercialize their discoveries. 3rd, it's necessary to attract funding. Mario talked about this. He showed the concept of interdisciplinary elements. This is not unique to CIHR or NSERC, etc. It's right across the board. It's very, very, very important. Even guys that are sitting there, philanthropists, they're asking, who else do you have as partners? What can we see at the end of our funding initiative? Fostering of collaboration with industry, very important. And ultimately, these activities lead to the advancement of knowledge and societal benefits, bringing methods to the patients. We are always under the gun. This is great, but what did it do to our patient? Mario said, yeah, it's about money. You saw all those slides, but more importantly, it's about impact. And the impact from the lens of the people that fund us is what's the impact to our patients? And of course, we are, our president is an accountant by training, and she looks at everything from under the lens of return on investments. You heard through the opening remarks. So if there was a slide I could put here as a take-home message, 2 points. One is the concept of multidisciplinary, absolutely critical to being successful. It requires every kind of people from all aspects of various disciplines, and the concept of balanced portfolio. We fully recognize that it's a continuum from discovery work to translation to post-translational commercialization, but you have to have a balanced portfolio. You can't actually do fantastic stuff if you don't discover anything. And if you discover something and you're in perpetual phase, you're not going to be balanced. So why is it multidisciplinary? Because it is multidimensional. The concept of intellectual property requires some legal insights. In fact, either we engage law firms or patent agents. I think you all know the difference, a patent agent and a patent lawyer. It's only one thing. Patent agent cannot represent you in a court of law. Outside of that, they do the same set of stuff. Business acumens, management of acumens, understanding of our not-for-profit guys that drive the decision-making, managing of knowledge of hospital assets. I, as the business guy on campus, if you were to ask me to determine our assets here, not too long ago, that would be very easy to do, right? Back in the early days, the 30s or something. You take what is the cost of the building and how much is an ER and what's a helicopter landing pad and parking lots. But what we're dealing with here is intangible assets. That's what patents is all about. So every day you have to get across the board of the hospital so that all of our valued staff come to work, but it's inside their head and they go back home. Our intangible costs is assets are incredible. As a hospital, you saw some of the numbers that Mario gave, and I'll just give you a couple of examples. If you take things like the S&P 500, the largest, over 70% of the top 500 companies now are non-tangible assets, intellectual stuff. So Microsoft, it's not even a software company. It is actually makes its revenue through licensing agreements, which we will touch on. And Qualcomm, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And more, that's what we're seeing in the world. And I have technology and software here because this is very much emerging. The concept of artificial intelligence and the concept of protection of algorithms. And why I have consultants is we can't do it all by ourselves. We have to rely on external experts, which we engage through consultants. We don't have retaining fees with any one particular company because expertise in that domain is very critical to being successful. So where do we stand? St-Boniface is kind of have a bunch of arms. You generate IP. You have to something Dr. Schubert brought when he came in being here is trying really hard to help in creating a conducive environment and staff engagement and inspiration towards these things. Interestingly, we had, I think, Lori, you had a visitor here from Berkeley, and Dr. Shah had somebody here from India, which was absolutely inspiring, talking to these guys, because this is part of what they do. I asked the guy from Berkeley, well, how do you motivate your guys to have a more balanced portfolio towards intellectual property protection and generation of wealth? And he paused. We were walking out through the front door. He goes, well, if the front of your parking lot was full with Porsches like it is at Berkeley, that is a motivation by itself. Whatever, take it as a grain of salt. The point is, it's not about money. That's just an indicator. We have to have an environment that is conducive for that. We're working hard on doing that. People have to understand that there's direct benefits to them. Market watch opportunities. If we don't know, I mean, Mario just talked about that. His slide, which was very revealing, actually. We've got to select winners. So I actually think I don't think we should interfere with the disclosures, but we should, you're right, Mario, you have to be scrutinizing right at the front end to select winners, but that requires a very good understanding of the landscape. Traditionally, people do with things that they are quite familiar with. Making a shift is it's not that easy. Mario talked in his strategic plan, he did a total disruption and say, how do we get rid of old things and look at new things in a new lens? Exchanges, and then we have options available to us, licensing, spin-offs, joint R&D, and licensing. So when we talk about joint R&D, there's two. There are two elements. We do fee for service work. So the only thing I'm going to talk about for translation is the stuff that we do clinically. And those are done jointly with the multinationals of the world and some of the local Canadian companies. I think you all see what's happening now. You're going to see more Canadian. Now, if I was a student, now is that's the best time to be existing and put your entrepreneurial spirit on, because there's lots of incentives, I understand, coming down as a reactionary measure to some of the pressures that we're seeing from the South. It's leading us to start thinking more innovative. So we normally like to think of this pathway as a continuum that's linear. I don't actually think it's linear. It's a continuous feedback to and from. This slide, I think, reflects better with the landscape of how these things are done. Whether it's joint research or you're acquiring external sources for capital, it's continuous. And if you ever negotiated a licensing agreement, Dr. Pierce is not here, but there are two components I wish to express. One, you've got to be very, 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 very flexible. And two, I don't know if you'll agree with me, Mario, but doing this stuff, the price point is less important. You will arrive at that at the end. All the other critical elements of that agreement is more important as you go through that phase, because ultimately what you think will happen doesn't always work that way. I'm hoping that Dr. Fernie, you touch on some of those things today, because as you continue, the opportunities, you create more and more opportunities to find more uses. Perhaps your initial claim may have to be expanded or modified, or and of course you're burning cash at a very high rate, but you got to find methods to be able to do that. Startup and commercialization. I don't think this hospital has too much of an appetite to actually directly be the owner of startups. They may take a small position, but we prefer to license off. So there's lots of critical elements you see on the right-hand side. Mario touched on some of these from a university lens and from our end lens, concept, publications, ownership, non-disclosure, confidentiality. A patent, when you have breach of confidentiality, is not very useful at all. It's in nobody's interest to have those things. But the point is, there are a lot of critical elements. I don't think you need to necessarily concern yourself too much. The technology office and our office here handles some of these things, all of these agreements and stuff. You don't have to get boggled down by. So commercialization is a great revenue source. Boards love it. But there are critical elements. If we're developing a policy, these are the large three critical areas that we have to pay attention to. Do we have the know-how? Institutional memory is very important. Skills, creativity, the intellectual assets. How exactly do you do a patent? I think Lauren might touch on that later this afternoon. But documentation. An idea is not protectable. You have to go much more than an idea. Idea is free and cheap. You got to do much more better than that. Get your drawings, get your documents, make sure you're able to express it very well. Have data. And there's no substitution for understanding the landscape, right? Competitive intelligence, as it's called, your market analysis. Something that we haven't done a good job with in the past, but it's becoming an issue right across the country, is the concept of misappropriation. If you're dealing with intellectual property, it's very, very serious business. It has to be integrated with your HR, new hires, entrance interviews, property rights, termination agreements, exit interviews. Unfortunately, or fortunately, the model of innovation occurs in individual labs. I think Mario put his examples on purpose to show that you have to be multidisciplinary, that not just a single lab, but involve multiple people. So who have access to those data? What happens when somebody leaves, somebody retires? And a lot of the invention and innovation occurs in imagine a hotel, but that particular room. And so they hire, even the hiring or the letting go of the staff and the continuity or tracking of those records hasn't been centralized necessarily in the past. So those are important components. I'm not going to get involved with the more of these preservation elements, but it's very, very important from a corporate standpoint. What is our policy? How do we get these things going? Collaboration and joint development, very different than fee-for-service work. Our policy here is very simple. I think it's the fairest in the world. It's simple. You collaborating with me, what is yours is yours. What's mine is mine. If through the process we develop something new, we will talk about that. So these are kind of step processes that the Technology Transfer Office go through, or very similar to this. In fact, I might have taken this from you, Lauren, very way back when. Just your steps: preparation, interviews, issuance, appeal. Sorry, this is not from you. The process. I'm going to get to that. Inventorship and joint ownership, very two different concepts. This hospital would not own a patent. All invention is for the person that has actually done the discovery, the person who did the filing. But that's the inventorship is different than ownership. But if you're an employee of the hospital or the university, that's a whole different story. Then there are the concepts of exclusivity or non-exclusivity. So let's skip these costs. Cost is critical. Mario said he doesn't have any money. I don't want to set up Mike for everybody to go knock on his door and say, guys, look, I have this great idea, but I need money, because he's trying very, very hard. We are together, we're trying to work on a portfolio of, my ideal world would be a sequestration of revenue for the continuation of this, as I said in one of the objectives on why. But it takes time. We need to have success and build on success to the people that we are trying to convince that sign the check. Opposition. You got to have money for whenever there's a patent or a serious business. Guys with deep pockets will challenge you. Sometimes it's highly, highly unethical. We have a very, very creative and hardworking clinician scientists on site that went through this entire patent protection jointly with everything was done the proper way, and yet we received opposition. If you were to examine logically where the opposition came from, and by records we had where that person, the disclosure occurred from us to them after it was protected. And after spending 38,000 euros, we've decided to drop it. You got to make a decision. That doesn't mean dropping it didn't mean it was not ours, nor was it a bad idea. So we need to budget for those things, like what happens if there's oppositional claims. If you don't have a patent, it's not the end of the world. There's plenty of areas that excellence is seen. We all are accustomed to publications. And I actually think if you assist a Canadian company, it's just as good, in my opinion. We can sit here and argue about impact factors and what's prestigious and what's not. The point is not needed. I think the best argument I heard was Dr. Herzberg, who got a Nobel Prize, said, let's not argue what's the value of basic science versus applied science. Let's argue what's poor science versus good science. I like that. So there is trademarks is another option. Copyrights. These are some items I identified. This is the Canadian landscape. It's not specific to st-Boniface. So I think the last data I saw just this week, of 28 countries, Canada was ranked 23rd. Which is very poor for where we are. We do some excellent science, but we don't necessarily. I actually think and this is, increases to TTO offices right across the country, foster a culture that encourages this stuff, encourages campus community to collaborate. As Mike says, this is the first of many, we hope. Expand support for commercialization, invest in financial programs to support hospital industry research, collaboration, recruitment. Mario touched on this briefly. When we're doing our recruitment, do we ever talk about, have you commercialized anything? Do you have any interest in commercialization? They should be aware of what exists within our facility for assistance. Anyway, everybody knows this common pathway. So the question is where can you file for something? At st-boniface, we're in the business of knowledge generation. The question is, how do we monetize those knowledge? Everybody is very smart, very bright, and all achieved. Publications, presentation, change in clinical practice, very important, but IP as well. So intellectual property is an investment opportunity. It's very difficult to have a businessman sit or woman across from you and you try to convince them. You can only impress people with the numbers and, cancer is the leading cause of death. Those numbers are good when you're applying for a grant. But for a business person, what are you going to actually do? So if you have a patent, it carries a lot of weight in your negotiation for monetizing your opportunities. So, Mario, I hope you can help me get the university to develop entrepreneurs. I think for whatever reason, our culture hasn't, money is seen as a bad word. For whatever reason, I know science has been making a lot of changes in getting people to think it's not a bad thing, unlike some amazing countries like Korea and Singapore and those places. So what's in it for you? Simple. You get royalties. 50% comes to you, the inventor. 50% is shared equally between st-boniface and the University of Manitoba. And for me, that's a huge opportunity. When Mike introduced me, he said, I got 18 years consecutively Government of Canada Innovation Award. Let me tell you, that sounds much greater than what it is. It's a fact, but the reason it's called an innovation award is because the federal government does not pay royalties to a federal employee. You're a public servant. The royalties actually go to the Queen. So it's a fact I do receive royalties, but it's relabeled as an award. That's why what I always say, I'd be a very wealthy person if I had this arrangement that the university have or the hospital have, because this is pretty good. I don't think anybody else have. Even if you're working for the 3Ms and the GEs of the world, you will not get 50% royalties. Now, there are situations where we negotiate and we deal with the TTO where we might arrive at different conclusions. As Mario said, that you have to be very scrutinizing right up front. We agree with that approach, but sometimes we disagree. There may be something that's worthy of protection, and in which case that royalty scheme changes a bit. If the lead organization decides to go in, then it just changed from 40 to 10. 40-10 instead of 25-25 each. But that shouldn't be a concern if there's any kind of negotiation going on between the university and us. Don't take that as a negative at all. So how do you do this? Very simple. You get an invention disclosure. It's filed out by the researchers. Earlier is better. Draft publication filed with the U of M and the CMB business at the same time. They will go through an assessment. We normally let the TTO take a lead. We are in communication. They always keep us in feedback, especially recently. There are three concepts if this is your first time in this area, there are three concepts that you have to pay attention to. Novelty, not obviousness, and it's got to be useful. Protecting something doesn't have a utility will not be granted. But also, more importantly for us, one of the things that we're looking for is a achievable market size. We have $10 million. If you're making something for a one-off, it's a different style of business. And so actually, Mario, there's a company in Winnipeg called Freedom Concepts that make bicycles for people with mobility disorders. Very successful company, but it's one-off for a particular individual. That's a company I worked with before joining here, supported, sorry. Technical feasibility is conducted and competition. And then we go down the path of protection. So I'm going to switch now and just give you a very practical example. Back in my day, when I was a student, I did immunofluorescence imaging on a monoclonal antibody, a single chain fragment. I actually approached industry and said, look, this is the standard way that you do it in science. I have an idea. We can do it differently. So we created a system to tag it with a fluorescent dye and look at it. And a colleague of mine decided that, hey, why don't we use this for cardiac applications? I'm interested in, I was flagging for tumor diagnostics. The person said, yes, why don't we do this in cardiac applications for indication of anastomosis and failed anastomoses? And this is the led to a company that was formed. We brought engineers together, created a thing. I'm so proud of this thing. It's called the SPY imaging device. This is a very, very old version of it. Where is this thing at today? This thing has been commercialized almost most countries of the world. It uses a standard fluorescent dye that's been on the market for a long, long time. That company, Novadac, was sold. I think it was Canada's highest sale, slightly under $1 billion. I did not go with the company because, of course, I was changing, but we helped develop that. And the first clinical trial actually was conducted right here at St-Boniface Hospital. For those of you who are driven by academic excellence, respect, just be cognizant. This stuff doesn't happen overnight. It takes time. This is a Journal of Urology, the December of just 2024. It has an article. Actually, the cover has a picture utilizing the device that I helped commercialize. That's why I get that patent money from. This is a randomized control trial to look at, does this thing work or not? Like the surgeons have immediate feedback qualitatively, but does it work after you subject it to an RCT? The answer is yes. That was the conclusion. So the point is, if you're going to change clinical practice, it's a long road. You got to have patience, and you got to have credit. No substitution for publication, but it still has to go through the standard rigors of RCTs, etc. I'm proud of that thing. I think that can be done again here. So Laurie, earlier this morning, we're talking, and he said, so where are the opportunities? My favorite slide is, look, everything has an idea, and you either go to the grave or you die, or to the sky. Whether it's a spin-off license production, you have to have understand of regulatory and ethics is paramount. If it's not ethically correct, you're wasting your time. If you don't follow the regulatory, you're going to your grave faster, and probably liabilities. So there's business case and business plan. Where on this continuum do you see the opportunities for protection? Everywhere. So while you select indocyanine green, there's plenty of fluorophores that are actually better than that's in the market. The key is what we talked about earlier, is to foster an environment of creativity. There's so much opportunity surrounding us, but are we looking? We have a long history of spin-off. I'm not going to go into any of this. Suffice to say, our very last one was Viatica, which deals with antimicrobial resistance. In my mind, it was a success, and I'll tell you why from 4 standpoint. Well, firstly, we insisted that there was something there. Some of the initial screeners thought that there was nothing there. We engaged and went down the path, and it was offered, so we were correct. We got external investors to license the technology. We recoup all of our investment that we made from this hospital. So it's very positive for us. They ended up doing fee-for-service work with us, and then ended up taking a position in one of our space. So we served as an incubator for commercialization. I think it's a success. I'm going to stop there.
Thank you very much, Bram. I think a lot of what he's saying there really emphasized the idea that when you get into this area of talking about commercialization, intellectual property, things like that, we have to start to look at the problems from a different perspective and learn to speak a very different language than what many of us are used to. As researchers, we typically attack things through a hypothesis that then we have objectives to address the hypothesis. We design experiments to answer the objectives, and then we interpret what all comes out at the end. That won't necessarily get you further forward if you're trying to now patent your information. The very first time I met with a pharma company interested in my work, the very first question was not what is your technology, is how big is the patient population that you might address? What is the need? Things that I hadn't really thought of too much at that point because I looked at it from the science perspective and not from the business perspective. And that's a very different area. Mary had said at the beginning about scientists should not be CEOs of companies. And I fully agree with that unless they're really unique individuals that have gone intensive training in that area. It's a very different area. But the important thing to remember is there are people that think about this stuff all the time, that speak that language here at St. B in the university, that are available to help you with understanding what all that means and not making the missteps. So our next speaker, I'm really pleased to introduce, is Dr. Paul Ferniehue. He's gone this route. He's and he's going to tell you about that. He's the director of the Division of Neurodegenerative and Neurodevelopmental Disorders here at St-Boniface Hospital. He's a professor and the former head of the Department of Pharmacology and Therapeutics. His research has been on, for many years, on peripheral neuropathy, which impacts over 190 million patients worldwide. And his focus has particularly been on sensory loss and diabetes, as well as the concept of nerve regeneration. He's built upon this expertise to co-found Winsantor Incorporated, which is focused on bringing to market a lead compound that has now entered phase 3 clinical trials. It is a topical medication to restore sensory nerves and peripheral neuropathy. Extremely exciting. And he's experienced, I'd say, all the ups and downs on the translational journey. He's going to tell us a bit about that today so we can see a real world example of what this looks like. So, thank you.
Thanks for the invitation, Mike, to speak. Yeah, this is going to. Yeah. Yeah, great. Thanks, Rob. Yes, good morning, everyone. So I'm going to go through just my specific journey, and I think I suspect many people's journeys are quite different. This was based upon when we started out, we'd been studying this problem at the basic science level for 20 years and had seen numerous clinical trials fail. And so myself and some colleagues I'm going to mention decided to, well, we can do it better. We've come quite a long way. I'm not sure if we've actually done it better. We've done it differently. So some disclosures. Yes, so I'm a co-founder of Winsantor. So Winnipeg, San Diego, Toronto. That gives you an idea of the team. And I am doing some work with Novo Nordisk. Yes, much of this work was done on the land of the Aboriginals people. There was work done in the US and there's work being done in Europe as well now. So it's quite a broad, big project. I'm going to give you very briefly like one slide about the drugs. I'm a pharmacologist, so I'm interested in drugs. I'll really talk more about how we push that through the system with the help of the universities.
We have to pause you for 1 second. Apparently the laptop is not coming through on Zoom. So
Oh,
as I feared, yeah, we have to use it. Sorry to interrupt. Thank you.
Shall I disconnect this?
Yeah.
Boniface. Yes, Boniface commercialization. And then there we go.
I think it's basic. And get the keyboard.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, so I'll talk really just how we moved from the lab into the clinic. And as Mike said, we have not started phase 3 yet. We have completed phase 2. And this is where we're hitting problems at the moment. And I'll be honest about it. It's tough out there to get funding for phase 3. We're looking at various ways of doing that. The science, one slide. We studied GPCRs, G protein coupled receptors. We discovered that antagonists of a GPCR receptor could actually make nerves grow. And we really spent the last 10 years understanding the mechanisms. I'm not going to discuss that today. We've got a list of things here. All of this was patented. So before anything went forward for publication, it got published, what was it, 2017 in JCI. Before we did that, we dealt with the patent office, the tech transfer office. Obviously, at that time, it was Darren Fast, who was very supportive right from the start. I have to say, before he came along, it was a different story. I think ever since, the tech transfer office has been a great supporter of what we've been trying to do. All of this information, the pathway, the activity of the drug, and critically, the formulation of a treatment was all done and patented. We have 2 patents with the U of M, which is joint because this has been a team exercise, okay? So the first author there is a guy called Nigel Calcutt from UCSD. So that meant UCSD was involved. And we also brought in a medicinal chemist from University of Toronto, Lakshmi Kotra. So it's been a complex 3-institute process in terms of protecting the IP and then developing the commercialization model. For cricketers there, that picture isn't actually Nigel Calcutt, it's W.C. Fields, but it upsets him because there's a huge gap between bat and pad. If you look at that, being Canadian, you won't understand, I know. But if you've got there's obviously some Indians in the audience and I'm English. So yes, he gets upset by that. So I always show it. So disclosure, key thing. Mario's obviously mentioned this. Bram's mentioned this. We wouldn't have got anywhere without doing that process. I think the process may have changed a bit in recent years. At the time, the tech transfer office looked quite carefully at this and did see that there's a big market. We're talking about hundreds of millions of people with neuropathy in this world at the moment with the increase in type 2 diabetes. There's no treatments. And so we went forward with this. Patents were granted. We now have 2 patents with the university, but I will say the company that was set up as a result of all this has its own patents as well. And we have a number of patents granted now. One of the key issues that obviously I think is an obvious question is that why did you set the company up in the US? We had 2 Canadians who really are part of the company, but it made sense at that time, maybe not now, at that time to set it up in the US because NIH was supporting commercialization in a big way, okay? And you'll see from some of the numbers just how big it's helped us. So we set a company up, myself, Nigel Calcutt and Kotra. And as Mario mentioned, we thought about being CEOs, but then we were given lots of feedback. And for our sanity, fortunately, we brought in another guy called Stan Kim, who has been doing the business side of it. And it's a tough job. There's big ups and downs. There really are. We're actually at a down at the moment. We're having trouble bringing money in. A few years ago, we had tens of millions. And you go through this process, but you have to stick at it. Yeah, you have to be dedicated. This is a hard, long journey, okay? Our CEO is absolutely dedicated to trying to get this thing done, all right? So what happened was the IP, which was held by U of M as the lead organization, licensed the IP to the company that we set up. And we were then able to do various steps, primarily with the aid of NIH. Over the last 5 years, we brought in about 16 million to fund the development of the drug. So this is producing the drug, optimizing the formulation, which has been the key issue. We were able to perform some proof of concept studies, which are now published. We've now just completed 2 phase 2 studies, one in Canada, one in the US. We're in the process of getting those papers published at the moment, and we're using that data to try and go to the next step. And that is proving difficult. Okay. We have 2 investigational new drugs applications that have been accepted. This is where things got very odd for us, because this drug we're using is called pirenzepine. Okay. It's been around for 30 years. So we thought this should be straightforward. It's safe. We can easily transfer it into humans with a new indication. We were told 5 years ago, don't worry, FDA will just push this through. That's not the case. Because we've put it into a different formulation, it's not taken now as an oral. Historically, you would take pirenzepine as an anti-acid oral drug. We're now using it as a topical drug to treat persons with diabetic neuropathy. That means it's a new drug. And we've had to go through all the processes that are related with a new drug, which has been really, really frustrating, because this drug has 30 years of safety. But that's what the FDA demand. With RFK in there now, we're hoping, since he doesn't seem to care about most things like this, that maybe we'll get through quicker. But I don't know. Nobody knows what's going on down there at the moment. So anyway, the company, with this phase 2 data and with some other things going on, we were able to get to license. So the way the company can bring money in, apart from, say, investors, is to license the drug to be used by another company. So one example is Marahu, which is a Japanese pharmaceutical company, wants to use this drug to treat people with chemotherapy-induced neuropathy. So people who go on chemotherapy for cancer, they get neuropathy. And it's one of the limiting aspects of cancer therapy. So that brings in money for the company, which helps us get along. So the phase 2 study that we did here in Canada was supported by Research Manitoba. We put in a big SPORE CHR grant with Toronto and a number of other people from across the country that was all about diabetes in general. And a small part of that was my neuropathy trial. So that led to it getting funded. That allowed us to do a proper phase 2 clinical trial based in Toronto. Initially, that was the plan. And then COVID came along, which made life quite difficult. So in the end, it was a multi-center clinical trial because we couldn't recruit enough people in one site. So the lead was Vera Brill, who was a professor of neurology at U of T. And essentially, the company provided the drug. The drug was applied to the lower limbs of people with type 2 diabetes and neuropathy for 6 months. And then we measured various things at the end to see if there was any efficacy. And the key primary endpoint for us was this thing called intraepidermal nerve fiber density. So people with diabetes, the small nerve fibers that innervate the skin disappear. This leads to all kinds of problems. It certainly contributes to lower limb amputation, ulceration, all kinds of problems, lots of pain involved. And this is common in chemotherapy-induced neuropathy, HIV-induced neuropathy. They all have a similar sort of, not mechanism, but the nature of the degeneration. It's called a dying back nerve loss. This drug, certainly in the animal models, made these nerve fibers grow back into the skin. So we wanted to see whether this happened in humans. And we also, which is the key endpoint actually, it turns out that the FDA aren't really interested in nerve fiber levels for various reasons. I won't get on my soapbox about that, but they're interested in things like quality of life. So we used a thing called Norfolk Quality of Life indication to get a general idea of whether the drug made them feel better, which is a very subjective measurement, but that's what the FDA wants. Yeah. I've got 2 data slides and then we're pretty much done, okay? So this is the first evidence. What we're looking at here is the density of the fibers in the skin taken from the lower limb of these persons with type 2 diabetes. And what you have is the baseline. And then at 6 months, we're looking at the effect of drug treatment. And these are 2 doses of drug. And you can see that there is a significant increase in the levels of nerve fibers in the skin of these human beings. I think this is the first evidence ever of a drug doing this, whether it's neuropathy or anything else. Okay, that's what we tell the investors anyway. This shows you a summary of the significant effect. The N numbers are quite small. This is a phase 2 trial, sort of N equals 20. And then here, we look, this is at the lower leg. This is higher up at the hip to show you that how important the topical application is. This isn't a systemic drug. It works where it is added to the skin, which is important for us because antimuscarinics can have quite powerful systemic effects. This shows that it's working locally. It actually acts as a depot in the skin and slowly delivers drug to the nerve endings and helps them to grow back. This is under review at the moment at eBiomedicine. And then in a separate study, we used a different drug called oxybutynin. This was actually done earlier than the pirenzepine stuff because you can get oxybutynin over the counter. It's used for overactive bladder syndrome and it's applied as a gel. So certainly my colleague Nigel Calcutt actually led this study, had the bright idea, well, why don't you just throw it on their legs instead? And all you need to look at here is what we're looking at is the oxybutynin treatment. This is placebo. And on the left here, there's a load of different endpoint measurements that you don't need to worry about, but they're all about quality of life, whether the patient has pain, whether they can feel temperature and so on. So there's a whole battery of complex tests, all subjective, based on questionnaires. And then what you can see at the end of the study, there's a number of endpoints that get improved. And in particular, the important one as far as the FDA is concerned is this quality of life measurement. It was improved by this treatment. So, for those of you who are thinking about doing this, if you're a trainee, please let your advisor know that you want to disclose. But I do encourage you to disclose, at least discuss the process, and then talk to the tech transfer office who can give you some advice. I do get the feeling at this university that we frown upon this thing. I talk to faculty and I'm quite amazed that the thought that you might make some money out of this, and let's be frank, I have made money out of this. I sold some shares a few years ago and made some money out of this. They seem to frown on it, which is crazy. If you're serious about translation, if you're serious about getting the drugs or the therapy you're working on in your lab, this is one of the only ways you're going to be able to do it. So you need to seriously consider disclosing. I don't recommend it for a young faculty who's just starting, but certainly once you become established, you should be doing this. I think the disclosure process is fairly rapid. I don't know exactly how fast it is these days. Maybe Lauren can talk about that later, but it's not an encumbrance. You can do it. You can just hold off presenting your data a couple of months and then you're in business. Okay. Whether you go ahead with the company setup thing is another matter altogether. That is, it's been 10 years now and it's been a struggle. We have highs and we have lows. But I would certainly do it again if I had the chance. So the people, lots of people involved. It's been about 10 years now. I should mention people like Kelly Jorensen and Daryl Smith, who've been in this from the start, who have helped us to get the data. but there's been lots of other contributors who have helped us move along. A major collaborator has been Nigel Calcutt at UCSD. It's been a joint exercise. We're still putting in grants to try and fund some of this stuff. But when you show them human data as a basic scientist, they tell you, oh, you've already done it. So we're not giving you any more money. So that's a bit upsetting. But there you go. That's where we are with all the people that have contributed. In terms of funding and the support, so again, I'll stress the Tech Transfer Office is Jodie Dexter, initially Darren Fast, have been really helpful. I know they're going through some negotiations at the moment with the company where they're being very flexible and really being supportive. The funding has been a mixture of things. Most of the funding has been US funding. There's no way I could have really done this in Canada. There simply wasn't the money available to support the clinical development of the drug. So when we set the company up, even though it was 60% Canadian, we made it 51% US. So we could go to NIH and get funding. And that's been a fantastic idea. But we also got significant support from Research Manitoba. This was a few years ago now. And obviously from St-Boniface, who have always been a supporting sort of anchor in the background to help this thing progress. And that's it. There's just some papers at the end there. Thank you. Have to pull that out or it will go crazy.
Should be okay. I think so. Yeah, there we go. All right. Thank you very much, Paul. That was outstanding. I learned one of these lessons the hard way myself. One of the earliest ideas I had, I found out that putting that idea in a grant application counts as disclosure when it comes to try to protect your ideas for a patent. Lost the ability to patent at that point. And I agree with what you said there, Paul. I remember early on, it was always sort of treated as you shouldn't be looking to make money on your ideas. We're here to serve society. I would argue that actually those go hand in glove. And in fact, by returning investment on your ideas, you can actually do more in the future. So the Catholic University of Leuven, for example, that I've worked with in the past, discovered a drug in the 70s that is used basically in every surgery in the world, more or less. They make hundreds of millions of euros per year in residuals. What do they do with that? Well, some of they spend on things they want to spend it on, but the majority of it is rolled back into their tech transfer program to develop the next generation of treatments, because those are the things that are going to actually move the needle on patient care. I'll put it to you another way. If you have a truly great idea and it delivers and it has a difference in someone's life, that's a value. Someone's going to make money on that. It should probably be the person that discovered it, so that they can then take those funds and reinvest them and do the next thing that they need to do. So think about those things. It gets into an ethical area, but it's an important ethical area for us to talk about. At this point, we will pause for 15 minutes, come back around 10:20 to resume. So folks on Zoom, please come back when after the break. Everyone here, the benefit of being in person, there's coffee and cookies outside, and we'll see you shortly. Thank you. All right, welcome back everyone for the second portion of this morning's symposium. So we had a great set of speakers from the beginning, talking a lot about strategy and the idea of getting into this. The next two speakers you're going to hear from are going to tell us a little bit more about some of the supports that are available to assist you at various stages on this process of moving your ideas out of the lab and or out of the clinic and into, or sorry, out of the lab into the clinic. So, our next speaker is Freya Arneson. She has worked for 15 years in research, in the research and innovation sector in this province, including with the government of Manitoba. She was previously the director of Rhythm, which is research improvements through harmonization in Manitoba, a really exciting initiative to streamline a lot of the process involved in moving things like clinical studies forward. She is focused on building Manitoba's economic health and well-being in her role as Director of Strategy and Programs at Research Manitoba. And she is going to talk to us today about the Innovation Proof of Concept grants, which have been developed specifically to strengthen Manitoba-based research innovation development projects, supporting process validation and proof of concept, bridging key gaps in the early life cycle of research translation and commercialization. A really exciting program to help get people through this sort of a valley of death that often exists where you get this great idea and you could get funding from the granting agencies like CHR, and then you got the investors on the other side where there's this gap getting between there because sometimes it can be really hard to find that key funding. And Paul talked a little bit about that in some of what he's talking, and the important contribution that Research Manitoba made in supporting his discoveries. So Freya, please come on up.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm not sure which one.
Great. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me today. I'm excited to be here to talk to you a little bit about the Innovation Proof of Concept grant that Research Manitoba has. I'm the Director of Strategy and Programs at Research Manitoba. In this presentation, I'll go over the IPOC grant, otherwise known as the Innovation Proof of Concept program. I'm going to talk a little bit about the eligibility criteria, application requirements, our review process for both our expression of interest stage and the full proposal stage. So if you have any questions, please just make a note of them and we can address them in the Q&A period, or you can always reach out to me directly after the event. So I'd like to start with a brief overview about Research Manitoba. Research Manitoba promotes, supports, and coordinates the funding of research excellence in health, natural sciences, and engineering. Sorry about that. And the social sciences and humanities fields in Manitoba. We are 100% funded by the provincial government in Manitoba through the Department of Advanced Education and Training. One of our main goals is to cultivate local talent development, and we do that by investing in early career researchers and graduate students. We also foster strategic partnerships to bolster innovation and support pre-commercialization in the province. In 2024, Research Manitoba underwent some planning sessions to develop new strategic goals. And those will guide the decision-making for our organization for the next 3 years. The three main big goals created from these sessions are to elevate Manitoba's research ecosystem, foster reconciliation through Indigenous-led and Indigenous-informed research, and continue advancing Manitoba's health research capacity. So Research Manitoba offers a variety of programs to support the research ecosystem in the province. Today, I'll focus mostly on IPOC, but I wanted to give you a high-level overview of some of the other ones that we support. So we are the main source of provincial matching funds for Canada Foundation for Innovation grants. We have our IPOC program. We also provide provincial support for MyTax operations and MyTax programming in the province. We run a new investigator operating grant program. We have the Rhythm Division, which Mike talked about a little bit, the Strategic Partnerships program, and we also fund studentships and fellowship awards. So the Innovation Proof of Concept grant aims to strengthen Manitoba-based research, innovation, and development projects by filling a funding gap in the innovation ecosystem. And Mike touched on that a little bit. So through two independent streams, this program supports activities directly related to process validation and proof of concept research. Our competition runs in 2 stages, an expression of interest stage and a full proposal stage. We have 2 intakes for the program each year. The first round opened for expression of interest on February 17th with an application deadline of April 15th. And our second round will open on August 18th with a deadline of October 15th. The full proposal stage of the competition is only available to those who have been successful in the EOI portion, and they will be invited to submit a full proposal. So the full proposal deadline is a little bit variable, but typically falls 6 to 8 weeks after the results of the expression of interest phase. The two streams of the program are Stream 1, which is a Manitoba-based consortium. This supports a local collaboration that addresses a company-specific discovery or innovation towards market usability. So this stream really supports industry academic collaboration. It allows academics to use their world-class knowledge, facilities, and highly qualified personnel to close knowledge gaps identified during the industry partners' innovation development. Research Manitoba provides up to $150,000 for these projects with a yearly maximum of $75,000. For Stream 2 of the IPOC program, this one is for Manitoba post-secondary researchers. It supports the advancement of discoveries or innovations within an academic setting. And these may result in products or technologies towards market usability. The maximum funding for the Stream 2 grants are $100,000 with a maximum of $50,000 per year. So through both of these streams, the grants are for 2 years. That being said, projects which are shorter in duration or have smaller funding needs are also welcome to apply. A few limitations are that there's a lifetime maximum of 1 grant towards process validation and proof of concept research for a single innovation or discovery. And there's a lifetime maximum of 4 innovation proof of concept grants per principal investigator. So I'll touch a little bit on the eligibility requirements for the program. For both streams, funding is targeted towards biosciences, ICT, advanced manufacturing, and infrastructure and transportation industries and technologies. So for Stream 1, applicants must be a Manitoba-based consortium comprised of 2 or more companies, organizations, and/or academic researchers. Usually, consortium contains at least 1 Manitoba-based academic member and 1 Manitoba-based industry partner. However, we have removed the firm requirement for an academic partner and are willing to consider industry-only applications. That being said, we still highly recommend partnering with academic institutions in Manitoba if you're an industry partner looking to apply for the program. Either the Manitoba-based academic member or Manitoba-based industry partner are eligible to be the primary applicant of the application, and the majority of the proposed research and commercialization activities have to take place in Manitoba. Applicants also cannot currently hold or be a co-applicant on a Stream 1 grant for the same innovation or discovery. For Stream 2 applications, the primary applicants need to hold an appointment from a Manitoba post-secondary institution or research affiliate that allows the applicant to apply for and hold peer-reviewed funds as a principal investigator or research professional, and be a research supervisor for undergrads, graduates, or postgraduate trainees, and publish their research results. It's important to note here that for college-based researchers who are also eligible to apply for IPOC grants, college applications are considered institutional grants, so those have to come in through the Office of Research Services at the college. An additional note is that industry partners are only able to partner on a maximum of 2 IPOC applications per fiscal year. So another thing to consider for Stream 1 applications is that Research Manitoba will not fund the full cost of any Stream 1 application, which means that this keeps going ahead on me. It means that matching funds have to be provided by the industry partner on the application. So we're looking for additional in-kind support in the form of eligible cash and or in-kind contributions that are equivalent to a minimum of 50% of the amount requested from Research Manitoba. And this has to come from the industry partner. At least 50% of the consortium matching funds have to be a cash contribution. So this contribution from the industry partner will need to be made after the date of the application. An example would be if a project is asking Research Manitoba for $150,000 in funding, the application has to demonstrate additional support equal to at least $75,000, of which at least $37,500 has to be cash. We also encourage co-funding with other agencies and organizations, and that's possible through this program. So some examples are the funding through other government agencies, through institutions, NSERC Alliance grants, or MyTax funding can also be paired with these grants. It's important to identify in your application if you have also secured funding from other sources. So I'd like to focus just for a minute on the TRL, or Technology Readiness Level requirements for this program. The TRL scale goes from 1 to 9, and IPOC supports activities with IP development between TRL levels 3 and 7. So the reason that we have created this requirement is that this was the range that was identified as that gap in funding and in innovation funding. So we aim to fill that funding gap and help launch projects from the validation stage and get them ready for the commercialization stage. Through our regular grant reporting, I just wanted to highlight for you that we know the average progression for an IPOC recipient and technology through this program was from a level 3 to a level 6 throughout the grant. And we also know that IPOC grants have resulted in numerous patents, at least 3 spin-off companies, and some licensing agreements as a result of the project activities. So key requirements to put together an IPOC grant are fairly standard. You would need to provide a budget and budget justification, and identify technology readiness levels, both at the beginning of the project and what you anticipate they would be at the end. A timeline for research activities, along with a Gantt chart that captures the big milestones of the project. And an application also at this stage would include a non-technical abstract and a 3-page research proposal. We also require a signature page. So depending on where the grant funding will be distributed, this will determine who signs the signature page. But if you are at an academic institution, it would be the director of research at your institution that would sign that. And a director of finance if you are an industry partner. We also require right now a Canadian Common CV attached to an application. Applications are made through our grants management system. So this requirement we have plans to phase out as we update our system, but it remains in place right now until that work is complete. I'd like to highlight the letter of support. That's really important. So in that letter of support from an industry funding partner, it would identify the cash contribution and the in-kind that would be part of the IPOC grant. So for the full proposal stage, the requirements remain similar, but the level of information is more detailed. So we would incorporate things like project design, risks, details on research capacity, a clear explanation of the consortium, as well as the roles of the various partners, training plans for HQP, and an in-depth description of the potential to result in business growth. I think we've kind of talked about that. So I'll talk a little bit about our review process for the program. The first step is that Research Manitoba staff would do an internal review of applications just to ensure that the eligibility has been assessed, it's a good fit for the program. Applications that are deemed to have met our eligibility criteria will be invited to submit a full proposal. The full proposals will be reviewed in a competitive peer review process, and that involves members of the academic and industry communities. Specifically, we have 2 kind of separate reviews for these applications. They're reviewed by scientific reviewers who assess the scientific merit of the application, as well as our College of Reviewers who look at the innovation and commercialization aspects of the project. We assess, or the reviewers are looking at things like research excellence, the potential impact, the nature and uniqueness of the partnership and collaboration, as well as the development of the highly qualified personnel. So again, you can access our application form. We have the 2 intakes per year. They're available on our grants management system, which can be accessed through the Research Manitoba website. In order to do that, you have to create a profile on our grants management system, which is pretty easy. And you also need to create a Canadian Commons CV, and all of our application information, program guides, and GMS user guides are available on our website. So if you have any questions, we try to be fairly responsive. You can reach out to us anytime, and we'll try to answer those for you. So I think that covers the high-level overview of the IPOC program. I am happy to answer any questions that you have afterwards. And with that, I think I'll turn it over to back to Mike. Maybe you can get me over there. Thanks.
Thank you, Freya. There we go. Sorry, the mouse is acting up here. No. It is misbehaving. There we go. Okay. All right. Thank you very much. And that brings us to our final speaker. Lauren, I just realized in the years we've known, I've never actually tried to pronounce your last name before. Oshapok. Okay, Dr. Sorry? All right, Dr. Lauren Oshapok. He is the Director of Partnerships, Knowledge, Mobilization, and Innovation at the University of Manitoba. He is a researcher by training. He obtained his PhD specifically in nervous system regeneration after traumatic injury. So maybe you and Paul have a lot to talk about. Maybe there's some commonality there. And he is very familiar with biomedical research and its challenges, having done that himself. He spent 25 years as an academic researcher and technology transfer specialist, and he identifies and evaluates early stage technologies from University of Manitoba researchers. He's going to talk to us about lab to market, which is something that probably a lot of folks haven't heard too much about, but you're going to hear a lot about in the next little while. It's a series of 4 program streams that accelerate moving ideas into the commercial realm, with 6 hubs located across the country. And the U of M is both part of the Prairies Hub and the hub lead for this program. The Lab to Market program just received a $32 million injection of funding over 5 years to boost innovation, commercialization, and entrepreneurship skills training. And st-Boniface Hospital is a partner in Lab to Market, as is other local agencies like the Bioscience Association of Manitoba and North Forge, other groups that we interact with. And in fact, for those that don't realize, all PIs here, we have basically purchased you a BAM membership for the last several years. I hope you take advantage of it. And we are looking at BAM as a speaker for our next iteration of this series. So Lauren, thank you very much for speaking today, and welcome to the podium.
Perfect. All right, great. Thank you, everybody, for the opportunity to talk to you today about Lab to Market. My name is Lauren Oshapok, and I'm the Director of the Partnerships, Knowledge, Mobilization, and Innovation Office. I know it's a mouthful. We often abbreviate it to say PKMI, although I was at a meeting last year where somebody said, it sounds like pick me. So pick my technology, pick my innovation. So that's what we go by is I'm part of the director of the Pick Me office. The role of our office is to support the innovation and commercialization goals of researchers affiliated with the University of Manitoba, but not just the University of Manitoba, because we also support the goals of those researchers that work at the University of Winnipeg and as well as in Brandon. So I'm not going to talk today about the invention disclosure process and the commercialization process. I think Bram has given a really great overview of the steps that are involved in that. What I'd like to talk about is another program that runs out of PKMI, which is the National Lab to Market program. You may have seen an announcement in January that NSERC and their Tri-Council partners announced over $90 million in funding to support entrepreneurship and innovation development in post-secondary institutions across the country. There were 4 national networks that were funded. And I'm really proud to say that the University of Manitoba was a part of all 4 of those networks. And as Mike mentioned, for the University Lab to Market program, University of Manitoba is not only a member of Lab to Market, but we run what's known as the Prairies Hub. So I'm going to focus my talk today on Lab to Market. So a little bit of a backstory on where Lab to Market and the idea of creating a national entrepreneurial training program first came about. So some of the discussions around Lab to Market program began way back in 2018, 2019 between Dalhousie and Toronto Metropolitan University. And they really arose out of conversations about something that, again, but Bram touched about, is the poor commercialization performance that we see in research-based innovations in Canada. So we create and we develop very strong academic researchers. But despite that strong Canadian research output, there just has been a sustained decline in research commercialization impact over 10 years or more. The reality is that we're just not seeing enough translation from academic research and into industry. Why is that? Part of this is that there's a fragmented ecosystem of entrepreneurial supports across the country. It's very uneven. In some larger metropolitan areas, in some larger universities that have business schools, there's some dedicated entrepreneurial supports available for faculty, staff, and students. But there's many, many institutions across the country that don't have that same level of support. So the initial partners for Lab to Market were Dalhousie and Toronto Metropolitan University, but the University of Manitoba joined Concordia University back in 2020 to start a 3-year trial system to look at developing entrepreneurial programming on a national scale. And for us here at University of Manitoba, what that meant was that we were able to secure a 3-year funding commitment from Prairies Can to develop Lab to Market training and offer it at a trial level for faculty, staff, and students in Manitoba, in Saskatchewan, and Alberta. So what are some of those problems, or what are the root causes of our very low translational rate of academic research into innovations? So the first one is that, really, to be honest, Canadian research culture, we're still incentivized by publications. And the reality is that research is very, very different than the commercialization path. But we are still focused on publications, on how much grant money that we bring in. There's really not a focus on translational entrepreneurship and innovation. Another issue is that Canadian HQPs, postdocs, graduate students, they lack translational skills that the industry is looking for. The reality is not every graduate student, not every postdoc is going to continue on in the academic stream and become a faculty member with their own research lab. But those students are lacking many of the entrepreneurial and innovative thinking skill sets that industry really wants. And finally, there's a lack of scientist entrepreneurial capacity, lack of deep tech startups. And a deep tech startup is just any company that develops a product based on a scientific or engineering innovation. And they tend to be risky, they're high risk, but they're highly disruptive to the market if they're successful. One of the things that we don't see a lot of are university appointments where there's more of a focus on the professorship and moving forward on entrepreneurship and innovation. There's that not enough focus on providing pathways for researchers that want to focus on entrepreneurship and include entrepreneurial thinking into their research programs. So I think we talked a little bit about the Valley of Death. So in academic innovation, a Valley of Death just refers to that gap that occurs between research and industry funding. And that's the spot where many, many promising research ideas fail to progress, fail to move forward. And that Valley of Death occurs right after the end of initial basic research funding, after CIHR, after NSERC, but it's before we can advance our innovation to a point where industry might be able to interested in picking it up and funders might want to pick it up. And a couple of the challenges for Valley of Death is that one was lack of funding. So grants often support the basic research, but securing funding for prototype development and market validation is really difficult. And we heard from our partners in Research Manitoba that with their innovation proof of concept grant, they're trying to help support and bridge that gap. But one of the other issues is there's an entrepreneurial gap. Academics, in general, we may lack our business skills or the networks that we need to translate our discoveries into viable startups. And that's because there's just not enough support. There's just not enough training to teach you those skills that you need to be able to recognize that you've discovered something or you invented something that might be useful outside of the lab and to properly validate it. So when the conversation started about where we wanted to focus lab to market on, there's a number of different types of training programs, a number of focuses that we could have gone into. But we decided that what we really wanted to do was create a training program that focused on early stage market validation. And why did we want to do that? And it's because there's been a lot of research that's been done in the last 10 years that has shown that the reality is that most startups don't fail because they run out of cash or because the founder group isn't right or the research wasn't strong enough. The reality is that 1/3 of startups fail because they're actually attempting to build things that the market doesn't want. So we wanted to be able to develop a program that allowed postdocs and graduate students, college students, the ability to learn those skills to validate their idea, determine whether or not there's a market of it, even before they move forward with creating a startup or trying to develop their technology as a business. So we don't want you to put your time and your money and your effort and your experience into something when there's no market for it. So the next part was we started to look around to see what else was out there around the world. What are other jurisdictions, what are other countries doing around entrepreneurial training in post-secondary institutions? Because we didn't want to recreate the wheel. So we wanted to be able to go and see if we could source programs that have been successful, adapt them for the Canadian academic ecosystem, and offer them to universities. And so for us, the inspiration was the National Science Foundation's I-Corps program. It's been very successful. It's first started in 2012. And since that time, they've had over 2,500 participants. They've created over 1,400 companies, and those companies have raised over $3.16 billion in funding. So the focus for NSF I-Corps is on teaching both entrepreneurial thinking in research programs, entrepreneurial skill sets, and in particular within those skill sets, it's on an emphasis on market validation. So the Lab to Market Network. So it began with Toronto and Dalhousie. Since then, it's grown out to be a national network from coast to coast. We have academic partners in every single province, as well as industry and ecosystem partners, Mitex, North Forge, Research Manitoba. It is really, truly a national network. As Mike mentioned, the Lab to Market network is structured in 6 national hubs. There is a Pacific hub based out of BC. There's an Alberta hub. The University of Manitoba is the lead organization for the Lab to Market Prairies, and we support training in Saskatchewan and Manitoba. Then there's an Ontario hub, there's a Quebec hub, and there's an Atlantic Canada hub. So it's really grown. It's grown beyond the first 2 or first 4 universities to 6 regional hubs. We have over 50 institutions now that are part of Lab to Market coast to coast, colleges, polytechs, and universities. It is a massive network. And I think the reason that we have so many people or so many institutions that have signed on board is that they can see the value of this programming. So over the last 5.5 years, we've truly become a national training program. And that did culminate in January with the announcement of over $35 million in funding to continue to provide lab to market training to post-secondary trainees over the next 5 years. So I do want to touch on, we have 6 regional hubs, but we also have a national health hub. So why do we have a national hub that's focused just on health-based innovations? The reason is because we recognize that building a health company has some very unique challenges when compared to traditional startups. The design of lab to market, the programming that we offer is overall, it's quite industry agnostic. So any idea that comes in, no matter what the field it is, we have programming that's set up. But we realized very early on that for health-based innovation or a health-based company, that might not be a good enough fit. So we've paired off a national hub that's just focused on health-based researchers. It's tailored for hospital and health-based innovations, for physicians, for clinician scientists, and students. And it's really designed for national collaboration across the network to develop and deliver tailored programs and to explore ways that we can connect different hospital partners to exchange expertise on hospital-based innovations. I do want to touch on all our funding partners, because none of this would have been possible without the buy-in from over a dozen different funding partners of all levels across the country. I said early on in the first 3 years of the program, we really were just a loose collection of regional networks. So each regional network was funded by our own funder. So for us on the prairies, it was with PrairieScan. But early on, each of those regional hubs, they made the concerted effort and the decision to act as a national hub. So to not create programming that was just specific for the prairies or just specific for Ontario, but everything that we did, that we chose to do over that 3-year period, was focused on creating this national network. So that's the background of Lab to Market. Really, how do we help researchers? What do we do as part of this programming? So the Lab to Market continuum, there are 3 programs. There's a 4th program that we're in the process of building. It is truly just a national-wide program that helps you move through your entrepreneurial journey. Every step along the way, we have programming that allows you to explore entrepreneurship, explore market validation, learn what you need to do around marketing, around prototyping, helping you move through the entrepreneurial landscape. And how is Lab to Market different? There's a lot of programs out there. We're not trying to compete with programming that already exists. We want to be complementary to entrepreneurial programs and partners that already exist in Canada. So the first one is our curriculum. So we have world-class lectures, talks, and workshops that are delivered by practitioners. So these aren't academics. We don't have academics teaching entrepreneurship. We have entrepreneurs. So we have entrepreneurs who have built companies, who have been successful, and they failed. These are your instructors when you come through the program, because we feel that you can learn the most by people who have gone through and struggled through entrepreneurship and been successful and failed. That's where we see the real value. The other is funding. So we recognize that it is really hard to be able to focus on entrepreneurial training when you're worried about working in the lab. You're worried about paying your rent, buying your groceries. So one of the things that we do for 2 of the 3 programs that we currently offer, participants that are selected for that program receive $10,000. And this is through our partnership with Mitex. It's a Mitex BSI application. That $10,000 grant is for the participant over the 16-week length of the program. It's for Validate and for Launch, and it is really designed for either salary support. So in some cases, the student is working on an idea or an innovation that didn't directly come out of their lab. And so it's a big ask to ask a faculty member that to release a student for 12 to 16 weeks from the majority of their research commitments. So the $10,000 really is a bit of a sweetener to say, it's a salary replacement while the student is going through the program. But we do have participants that go through it where their faculty member is also an inventor on this innovation. And you don't have to use that $10,000 just as salary support. It can be used to pay for incorporation of a company. It's to go to a trade show or go to a conference. It's that money is there to help jumpstart the entrepreneurial journey. Again, I'll just touch again on our best-in-class mentorship. We have buy-in and we have mentors and facilitators from coast to coast that teach these programs. We have subject matter experts, we have founders, industry leaders, service providers, we have IP agents and lawyers that give lectures, accountants, all to give you the highest quality teaching and training through the program. And then the last thing we say is that once you as a participant have gone through a lab to market program, you're part of the lab to market network for life. So you're an alumni of the program. We recognize that there's a certain percentage of students or trainees that will go through the program, come to an end and say, you know what, I have a really great academic research idea, but it's not a business idea. But we say to those students, what you've learned and the connections that you've made while you go through the programming, it does matter. They will be available there for you if you come to another idea, either a year down the road, 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road. Lab to market and the network and the alumni and the people that you meet will still be there to help you when you are ready to move forward on your entrepreneurial journey. So for lab to market, there's a team. So it's mostly focused, the training programs are mostly focused on the graduate students or the trainees. We do require that there's a principal investigator involved in the validate and the launch programs. That is because the $10,000 in funding comes through MyTech's BSI. So there has to be a technical lead or a principal investigator that can hold Tri-Council funding. But again, that principal investigator may be an inventor on a technology, it may not. But the goal of lab to market is really to allow the student or the trainee to be the entrepreneurial driver. So the programs are focused towards trainees. Okay. So, but what are the programs? So we have 3 programs. The very first program is Lab to Market Discover. It is a very low touch point. It's only just designed for discovery of entrepreneurship. If the idea of entrepreneurship is something that you're interested in, you don't have to have a business idea. You just have to be interested in learning more about entrepreneurship. So it's either a 3 half-day program or a 10-week program that we call Foundations. It's online. It's free to sign up for. It's an exploratory program that just allows you to talk with entrepreneurs, to learn from entrepreneurs. What does entrepreneurship mean? What are some of the challenges? What are some of the things that I should look for before I decide whether or not to jump into the pool and try and create a company? It's really just an entry level into Entrepreneurship 101. Validate is our core program that we offer. Validate is designed to allow you to do market validation on your business idea. So you do need to have a business idea when you apply to the Validate program. It's a 4-month program. It provides, again, the $10,000 in funding to support you while you go through it. And it provides entrepreneurial training, again, through practitioners, entrepreneurs in residence, and other mentors that can help you assess the validity of your business idea. So one of the things that we see at the end of Validate is, again, approximately 40% of the students that go through it say, you know what, this has been a great experience, but I can't build a business around this. And to those students, we always say that's not a failure. That is, you have managed to be able to validate that idea, and you've avoided putting time, money, and effort into a business idea that the market doesn't want. But again, the skills and the skill sets that you gain through Validate are always going to be available for you, no matter if you decide to create another company down the road, or you decide that you want to go into industry. Because this is one of the things the industry is looking for, is the ability to be able to do market research, to identify when there's a commercial potential to an idea. One of the things that I'll say about Validate, which is the number one thing that I get complaints about, is that as part of the course, what you're required to do is to do 100 customer interviews. So to validate your idea. And that is a really hard thing to do, to say, I want to do 110-minute phone calls with strangers to tell them about my idea, ask them, is this something that you'd be interested in buying? And do you see any flaws in it? It's something that would be hard for me, and it is something that's hard for the participants, but it's absolutely crucial to the success of the program. You can't validate a business idea by saying that, my lab mates or the people that I work with like it, or my family thinks it's a good idea, or my friends think it's a good idea. You have to go right to your customers. So you have to go to the people who might be buying your end product and get an honest assessment from them. Is there a need for this? Finally, our last major program is called Launch. We'll be running Lab to Market Launch for the first time on the prairies this summer. It's going to be one of only 3 launch programs, Lab to Market launch programs, that'll be running this year in Canada. It is really designed for students that come out of Validate that say, I have a business idea. I really want to move forward with incorporating a company and further along that entrepreneurial pathway. So it's a 4-month summer accelerator program. There's another $10,000 payment, and it is a tailored training program to allow you to move that business idea into a startup. We talk to all the successful applicants. We try and decide what you need personally in order to move forward. In some cases, it's additional market validation. Some cases, it's prototyping. Some cases, it's market training. Some cases, it's creating a pitch deck so that you can stand up in front of a room full of angel investors, share your idea in a way that is exciting and can get people to buy in. So it's a great program, and it is what we hope is at the end of a launch program, each of the members of that program incorporate a company and move on in their entrepreneurial journey. A couple of statistics over the last 4 years, we've had almost 900 teams go through the 3 programs across Canada. It has been wildly successful, and we are looking at quadrupling the number of students that we provide lab to market training over the next 5 years. So just as a summary, again, there's discover, don't need a business idea, there's no payment, it's a very low touch point, couple of hours a week at most. Validate, you do have to have an idea, but there's a payment that's involved. Same with launch. And then the last program that we've trialed and that we're looking as a network to build, it's called Lab to Market Build. So it'll be around product design, development and prototyping, and really helping that startup move forward. So I'm going to skip this. I'd say discover, validate, launch is really around exploration, pre-validation. As that company launches past build, there's a number of other funding agencies, there's a number of other programs that will support the entrepreneur and support the startup. We are really at the very earliest stage. I will touch on the Lab to Market Health Hub does have tailored programming that's available. Validate Foundations, which is 1.5 hours a week for 10 weeks, is going to be running fairly soon. It is a virtual training program for physicians and clinician scientists. It is that very early touch point. You don't have to have a business idea to go through it, but it's, if I'm interested in entrepreneurship, what do I need to know? And in particular, what do I need to know as a physician? So the deadline for that is March 17th, and it'll be 3 half days. It'll be running March 24th, 26th, 28th. I've left the contact for the National Health Hub lead, Jared. I would you can either reach out to Jared directly or go to labtomarket.ca and look for the Validate Foundations program. Reach out. It is a great program if you want to learn more about entrepreneurship. And with that, I'll end the talk. So thank you very much. Thank you. There we go.
All right. Thank you very much, Lauren. So I'd like to invite the speakers to come down now. I think everyone's around. And we have time for a Q&A. Now, I've slotted 30 minutes. I don't know that we'll use that, but basically you've got some massive brain power here and a wealth of experience to tap into. So the only caveat is I ask people to go to the microphone to use it so folks online can hear. And Rob, I can't see the online chat. So if you could let me know if there are questions on the chat, I can relay them and we can go from there. So, okay, so we've got everyone down here. Great. And I would like to point out to our speakers as well, we have a lot of trainees in the audience. And so I think, Lauren, a lot of what you were just saying is going to resonate with the folks there in particular. So, okay, first at the microphone here. Yeah, go ahead. Oh. And you can just say who your question is to or if it's to the group as a whole. Thank you.
Really enjoyed today's program. Thank you. Actually, my question is to the group. As a researcher, I understand that we discover things, invent things. How do we understand where is the market for that particular invention or discovery? Like just within Canada, if there's a market in a province or is it across Canada? And how do you understand, okay, how do you evaluate the value of that invention is what I'm trying to understand.
Yeah, great question. And I'll ask whomever of our speakers would like to address I might ask Bram to address that first, perhaps, because you think a lot about that in your day-to-day. Just use the microphone again so that everyone.
Sure. I think anybody here could weigh in on this. It's a very excellent question. Market research should not be underestimated. From the scientific domain, we tend to think that these things are less than, but it's absolutely critical. So the concept of a business plan and then a business case are two different concepts. It's highly targeted. There are lots of resources available. I think it depends on your stage of development. Lauren identifies some of these programs, but there are also market reports that are sold. They're quite expensive. Depends on your stage of development if you have the resource, etc., to get these things. One of the ones that I always use is called the Thomson report. I mean, it costs, but in this game, sometimes you got to bootstrap until you get what you need. The point is well taken. It's not that easy. Do you see Paul's presentation? How they saw secondary use? And I'm sure, I mean, I'll let him talk, but they choose the path that they thought would be the least resistance from the FDA. And now it's being pursued for a different opportunity. Often you don't see it immediately.
Thank you. Else want to? Yeah, sure, please.
So I'll say as part of the initial invention disclosure process, when we have researchers that come into the partnerships office, there is, before we make the decision on whether or not this innovation is something that we need to protect with a patent application, and we do some early stage market validation. At that stage, it's not an in-depth. What we're looking for is are there competitors already out there in the market? Is there a gap that's been identified in the publication and in the literature? But I'll put in a plug again for Lab to Market, because like Bram said, we never want to underestimate that market validation. And if there's resources that are available at a very early stage to allow you the ability to do that, it helps you make a better decision, not only just for the innovation that you're coming into at that point, but for future innovations that you may come up with.
I had one more question. Suppose you have an invention, you have a patent, how do you approach someone to take that patent, maybe license it from you, and then use that patent as a technology and carry it forward? Because for a researcher, it becomes difficult. Are there platforms and agencies that help you with that? Or is it something that you have to do it on your own?
So this, I'll start by saying, I think this is an area where we have a lot of people to assist you with that. We've got our business development office here under Bram. We've got the tech transfer office and the folks that Lauren works with. They think about these things. They look at these kinds of things, and they're the folks that you want to talk to move those kinds of ideas forward. Going back to the idea of, how do I know if this is something that's going to be impactful? We often write statements at the start of our grants or our applications saying there's X number of people in the world that are affected by something. We talked about peripheral neuropathy and 190 million potential people. That doesn't mean all of them would be treatable, but you can actually start to do the math and break it down. I don't know, Paul, if you had to have those kinds of calculations done early on in your process to basically convince people. Not only is this an important medical problem, there's a lot of people out there that will benefit from this. And as a result, there's a large customer base that will benefit from this. Because when the companies are looking at investing in your ideas, one of the things they're looking at, as we heard from the beginning and a number of speakers, return on investment. That idea that, all right, if they're going to put in $10 million to get your idea off the ground, what are they going to realistically see coming back from that? So you got to start to do the homework to build that idea early to say, yes, there's a population out there that needs this. It's going to be ongoing. It's going to be year over year. And it's not something you come up with immediately, but it's something you develop in conversation with people like the ones here that will help you answer those kinds of questions realistically. I don't know if anyone else wants to
just add.
Yeah.
In terms of our specific case, the market research allowed us to value the company. And that allows you then to go to investors with a certain value of the company, which determines if they say put in 10 million, they get so much equity based upon the value of the company. So it's absolutely key to the survival of the company that you have a high valuation in most cases, yeah. and going forward, it brings in investment.
Thank you.
So what Paul said is the right thing. It's the structured approach. Knowing your competitive intelligence will tell you who are the people within the domain. When you're pitching to investors, they're very structured, have short attention span, very, very focused. They have done this before. It's very different than if you are doing. My take is after you're a graduate to that lab to market program, the entrepreneurial spirit will come out. Here's two examples that I did, which is really street actions. Okay, this is not structured, but it's sort of common sense. I wanted to meet the president and CEO of GSK. I was at the conference where he's at, and I specifically targeted him, Andrew Whitty at the time. And it was a cancer thing that we knew ahead of the time that GSK had 70% of all of the asthmatics drugs in the world. And we had an asthmatic thing. So I sat right in the front, and I knew that as soon as he's finished, he was going to walk out to the auditorium, and I ran after him. And yes, he was able to fix us up. So sometimes you got to revert to those entrepreneurial moves that you get training for in a program like that. It looks, during the time you're doing it. The other one was Inclone Medical Systems. I met the CEO at the airport in Geneva, and he said, here's my card, and I'll see you on Monday morning. There was an email, and we acted on it. Aggressive.
Yep. Thank you.
Yeah, there's a bit of a strange misalignment because we as scientists, we typically look at problems as medical challenges to be addressed, solved, cured, treated. These folks are looking at this is a financial problem to be solved. What is the investment and what are they going to get as a result of that? The science behind it is the means to that end. And that's why I said when I first talked to one of my potential partners, I had tons of graphs of data that we had spent years generating. They were very uninterested in that. They wanted to know it existed, but what they really wanted to know was how many people could benefit from this. That's where their first questions started to come at. And it caused me to really think about things in a very different way that I hadn't before. As scientists, we don't get that training typically. We talked earlier about not having CEOs, scientists as CEOs. It goes the other way, right? You wouldn't want like an MBA trained CEO to come in and run the actual experiments in your laboratory because they don't have the background. It works the other way. We don't have that training to run the company, with few exceptions. Sometimes people will go out and in addition to their PhD, they'll develop an MBA or something like that. But that's few and far between. And so that's why we want to, take advantage of the presence of experts on this campus, on the university campus, and broadly in the province to move those things forward.
Thank you.
Laurie.
Yeah. First off, thank you very much. I think this morning's discussion was terrific. There's a couple questions and a comment. So CIHR now, and I think some of the other funding agencies in particular would like to have their funded research flagged, right? They asked the committee, is this of commercial value? Is this of public interest? And it's quite true. I mean, all of us will write a biological grant that's focused towards some disease, but I'm wondering if there's a mechanism that the grants that are funded can be then partnered with, biotech or others that are interested in this, because CIHR then posts on their website and they say, look, this is what we funded because it's of clinical interest.
I might ask Mario to weigh in
I was going
on
to ask
that.
Mario. Well, this was going to be to the committee, but the general discussion was if this is an opportunity for you to take a funded research program and marry it with, people that, venture capitalists, Smart Park.
Yeah, it's a very good point, Laurie, and we're always watching for what's funded and to bring in allied groups, or in certain cases to bring in partnership expertise so you can make it more marketable and more viable, right? So we always start with that initial seed grant, and then we ask the question, how can we build a more extensive network that may include industrial partners? Usually does, right? But I think having that initial seed is just like a startup company, having the first investment is critical because it allows you to then go ahead and secure further investments. But the Major Projects Office is in the business of doing exactly this, right? And ORS alerts the MPO as to the grants being funded, right? It turns out that I'm on top of all those as well. So I know what's coming down the pike before they're announced, And so I moved fairly quickly to say, well, how can we leverage this?
Right.
And you're absolutely right. It's a question of leverage.
So the reason I'm asking is because, and without being self-serving, in our case, we went down another path, so we have a potential large collaboration with NASA and everyone else. And, we're concerned now about non-disclosures and some of the things that we'd like to develop, but at the same time, we want a partner. That's not my expertise. I don't have an MBA, but I understand science. So, we need help. I need help. Others need help in terms of developing this through the university because it's a university partnership.
And that is handled now by PKMI, PICME,
Okay.
right? We have various aspects, various branches. So the best way is to come and see Lauren, and then we'll direct you as best we can.
Yeah, fantastic.
But we've also started a new concept. It's called Idea Start, right? For nascent ideas, let me put it that way. If you're thinking about doing something, you have an idea, to congregate and to get mentorship. Okay. So the Bannatyne campus will have such a hub right by the Starbucks, opposite the Starbucks facility, for you to drop in and to talk to mentors of what you need to launch an idea. We'll have one in the science building, have one faculty of science, faculty of engineering, and in the student union building will be our headquarters. And we'll have another hub on the in the ugly looking rectangular building as you drive up to the university. But the Idea Start logo is there. Now you may think this is crazy, but 1 year ago, a researcher from architecture came to our two employees at Idea Hub and said, I have this concept for a startup, but I don't know how to market it. I don't know how to get it off the ground. She was in design, fashion designer. Okay. So Rajiv sat down with her and mentored her on what she would need. He set up over 1,000 companies, right? Working for a big outfit in India. So marketing expertise was critical. So we sent her to Stu Clark to pick up the marketing students. And then he provided a lot of the other mentorship. Last week, she showed on runway 8 in New York. Okay?
Brilliant.
Big show. And if you look at the panel in Times Square, it's advertising her startup company and her show. So that's an unusually fast track, 1 year. So it is possible, but we're setting up these Idea Start hubs all over the campuses right now.
So from my perspective, this is really exciting, obviously, because this is an opportunity to leverage federal money translated into something that's of value. But, from Paul's perspective, and this is an example, that it's not overnight. Some of these things happen very, very quick, or they may take years to mature. But it's nice to see that at least there's resource, human otherwise, that are available here at to do this.
Yeah, that's at the seed stage, where as you go down further down the path, you need much more investment.
Right.
We are currently working with the provincial government to set up a separate innovation fund, because that's what we're missing, to invest in licensing, to add value, to de-risk, to help us set up companies. It still doesn't address Paul's concern further down the road, where you need at least 50 million to do a decent clinical trial, or even 100 million to do a clinical trial. So that's a very different aspect where you have to license to partners who have deep pockets, right? But the initial stages, I think, are more manageable, except that this government does not invest. And that's a definite gap, but we've identified it. I've spoken to 3 ministers in the last 2 weeks about this, and they're well aware that they have to do something about it.
Thanks very much.
Okay.
Thank you, Laurie. And I think, like Freya, you've worked in government, you don't represent the government, but you've worked in government. Research Manitoba was fully government funded, as you had mentioned, through the Advanced Education Ministry. It seems that, would your sense also be that, like Mario was saying, that this is in lockstep with what the provincial government is trying to do as well, in supporting through different mechanisms to get these ideas off the ground and bring the pieces together? Sorry, I'll have you speak to the mic.
I think government's been very supportive. Our conversations have been fruitful and positive, and we're optimistic about increased investments as they're able. Yeah, so.
Thank you. Yes.
Hello. Thank you very much for today's session. It was very informative and an eye-opener to, I think, everyone over here. As a graduate student, for 2-3 years, we develop on a project. There's always improvement on the project. So how do you build a best product for the market? As an engineer, there's always improvement for your, you discover a drug, there's always a better drug out in the market. So how do you compete with the existing market, and what are the strategies that a graduate student or a postdoc should take to overcome those challenges?
Anyone want to take that? Lauren?
Yeah, I mean, development and iterations of new technologies, it never stops. There's always improvements that are going into to the discoveries and to the technologies that we create. There's a certain point where you reach a minimal viable product. You have a prototype, you have something, whether it's a drug that has efficacy in animal models or a prototype that is, 15% more effective than something else that's already out there on the market. That's the point where you start to look and evaluate whether or not you have something that is more than an academic research program, if it's something that can be commercialized and spun out. But you're right, there's always improvements that are going into it. The way those improvements are handled, it depends on the funding that's going in to that research program, what your partners are, what the inventors want to do. Are they creating a startup themselves, or are we licensing to a large or a small established company? But improvements are always continuous, and so what we hope here at the university is that you have an idea, you have an invention, we find a potential receptor out in industry that wants to take that on. And often the conversations around those licensing agreements also include conversation about, can we continue to do more research, and can there be research funding that comes back into the lab, comes back into the university to do those improvements? And so we try and have that as a component of what we do for our license negotiations, is to say, look, the product that we have now is a really good academic product. It's not a commercial product yet, but it could be. Are you willing to continue to fund the graduate students, the research, the equipment, everything that we need here in academia to help do some of those improvements and those move that technology forward right here within our labs?
Yeah, please.
If I may, as Paul has indicated, and it's very true, drug development is not an easy task. It's not for the faint of heart, right? And we realized this about 15 years ago. So I was one of 5 founding members of the Center for Drug Research and Development in Vancouver. We finally wound up securing both provincial funding from the BC government, but also federal funding. And then serious funding from all the pharmaceutical companies, Merck, Pfizer, J&J, Roche, right? Anyone that moved. The reason they invested is because they got a first look, okay? But it was a serious venture, and you're realizing that you couldn't go it alone. So individuals such as you would pitch their initial results to a committee of CDRD, right? And interestingly, Peter Cullis, who provided the liposome for the COVID-19 vaccine, was one of our co-founders. But he too had to pitch his work, okay, to the committee. So based on that evaluation, they would assess market strength, right? Global competitiveness, the competitiveness of your own technology, what the value add would be. If it had legs, as we say in the business, then they would go to the next stage, do the animal studies. You can't do anything in drug design without a PK tox study, right? You need toxicity studies. You need pharmacokinetics. I did all this, right? So you can't afford to do it. So you have to hand off to an outfit like CDRD. CDRD has now morphed, it's now much more professional, into ADMARE, ADMARE. That's from the Latin, from coast to coast, because we set up 2 outfits, one in Vancouver, the original, and another in Montreal. So if you're in drug design today and you have a good idea, don't waste your time. Go directly to Admar and say, this is what I have, one page, and they will evaluate your technology. It's too long the other way. I did it the other way as well. That's why we set up CDRD. It killed me. It was a lot of fun working with VCs, venture capitalists, but at the end of the day, we realized there was a faster path. And so that's my advice to you. Don't try and go it alone. You also need teams of medicinal chemists optimizing your scaffolds, right? And that was also provided by CDRD. And you may not have that synthetic expertise. And I can tell you for sure that for scale up, you don't have that synthetic expertise, right? That's the art form in drug design, is scaling up. So, but come and talk to me if you want to, anytime.
Thank you.
Thank you. And the other thing I'll add here is, I'd mentioned how the first question is often how big is your treatable population, how big is your market, right? Often the second is who are you competing against and what's already out there, and that kind of goes to what you're saying. If you're building on something that's already there, Paul had a unique situation where they'd identified a drug that had a new purpose that no one had ever predicted. That fulfill the non-obvious piece that Bram had mentioned in developing intellectual property. Even though the drug was already out there, it had never been posited to be used for this particular aim, and therefore that is patentable. If it's just an add-on to something that's already out there, it becomes much more questionable as to whether you can actually do that. So again, you've got experts that are available that can answer these things. We've heard about CDRD. It's a fantastic resource, but I suspect for many in the audience, it's the first time they've ever heard of it because we don't play in that area typically. So that's, again, we're reaching out to the folks like who we have here can help you because they are familiar with these other pieces that are out there. Think of it as building a collaboration. If you're doing a grant, you might be an expert in this aim 1, but you need someone else for aim 2 and someone else for aim 3 because that's where their expertise lies and yours does not. You're doing a collaboration now, except you're the expert in the science, but you need someone in the business, someone in the market assessment, someone in the other pieces. And that's where asking questions and going broadly is going to help you. Talk to as many people as you can. Some will say, I can't help you, but I know someone who can. And others will say, oh, we have something set up exactly for what you're trying to do. So,
Thank you.
Yeah. So Dr. Ramchawan has to leave, but thank you very much, Brandon. We appreciate it.
But just before I leave, I have something for Freya. Great programs. The one that involves industry, you use the word prototype. For us in the biomedical space, can a prototype be used synonymously as a trial? Because, for example, Paul's thing, it's much more advanced, but I don't think we should be penalized for being in an advanced position. Advanced but paralyzed, I mean, so the answer is yes?
Well, it's an interesting question. I would
Okay.
definitely take back and talk about it.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, actually, go ahead, please.
Well, firstly, thank you so much for amazing conversation that we have been having today. I'm coming from the University of Winnipeg, working as a program officer for health research partnerships and impact. And in my role, I talk to a lot of faculty members, trying to empower them that no, there is value in your research that could go into the market. But oftentimes than not, the researchers first think that it's ethically wrong to monetize their research. And I think that is the type of conversation that happens more than we know here, especially in Canada. And how do you, like, as practitioners, how would you approach those faculty members? How do you empower those faculty members that first, it is okay, and second, you should do that? So is there any advice as to how we should approach those kind of researchers?
I've always said that we tend to fetishize money. We hold it up on a pedestal that it doesn't really belong. It's a tool. And this is a tool you can get more of to then use to do other things. And I'd said before, if your idea is truly groundbreaking, it's going to really make a difference. Someone will monetize it. And I would argue it should be the person that knows it best or that has developed the idea from scratch. And that's not something to be ashamed of. That's something actually that's a superpower that you can develop and then use to do more things afterwards. So I was saying to someone at the break, my dream had always been if I either won the lottery or one of my ideas took off and I got a great company and made a lot of money on it, the first thing I'd like to do is endow my own lab so I don't have to apply for grants anymore. But I could keep doing science then, right? But there are it's simply another means to advance things. I don't know if anyone else would like to weigh in on that, but it's a common problem. And I heard that when I was a student myself, so it hasn't changed a lot. Making money is bad. Well, everything we do needs money. And I think the more, as funding contracts and becomes more and more difficult, being able to source it ourselves becomes more critical. So.
If I may, in all my experience, I found that people who make that excuse, they make the excuse because they know they won't measure up. Okay? They will not pass the critical go, no goes that are necessary to actually commercialize and monetize a product. But the way you answer it, should I monetize? Just draw on personal stories. How many people have you lost to cancer? How many people have you lost to MS, ALS, and so on? And say, well, don't you think that if you could help them, you should? Right? So.
Yeah, and those new drugs to help them will not come without tremendous cost up front. So there's always money in the mix. So yeah. Okay. Thank you. Actually, I'll see if there's any questions online.
Could I ask a question, Mike?
Absolutely. Yeah.
A question for Lauren to do with the lab to market. How does Faculty of Graduate Studies view it? Because you're taking students not out of their program, but maybe in parallel with their program for, was it 2 months or something? The work they do, can that be assessed within their thesis, or is it a separate thing? Can they get extended time to completion given those issues? Has that all been thought through?
In general, Faculty of Graduate Studies is supportive. It's, when you look at the length of time that it takes to do a master's degree or a PhD, sort of that I say it's a 16, like validate and launch or 16-week programs. They tend to be about 12 weeks. There's a couple of weeks on either end that are sort of like pre-program and post-program. But I think overall, the work that's done can go into a thesis. It can be, especially if the idea that's being validated is part of the student's research. I think it's about the change that we're seeing within academic institutions, not only here at University of Manitoba, but across the country, that it's okay to incorporate entrepreneurial thinking into our research programs. And, if we have a student that's doing that, we should be able to support them, and we should be able to let them use that as a benefit. It shouldn't be negative for them.
Thank you. Okay, we're reaching the end, but I'll give you a last question. So go ahead.
I had this question where how challenging it is to get together an idea where you don't actually have a patent for. Like suppose you just have an idea, it is beneficial, it's gonna work, but it's not based on your research. Like you don't have a patent for it. Like, is it difficult to bring that idea together and sell it, market it? Like how,
Yeah, marketing, if you don't have an idea, you shouldn't even think about that. What you should think about is getting feedback on the idea itself. So Idea Start is set up exactly for that purpose. You have an idea, show up. Rajiv is there every Friday at the Student Union building. Just drop in and talk about it, right? And that's how the design idea came about. So, but don't even think about marketing or patenting. If you just got an idea, you have to, baby steps.
Yeah, that's true. Thank you.
Yeah, one thing we don't talk much about, developing a patent costs money. I think it's about $70,000 to develop a typical US patent. So, and there's no guarantee on return on that. So you have to have something that you think you can really get behind. I will say a no early on doesn't necessarily mean a no forever. So stick with it. If you believe in it, develop it more, come back, keep coming back, talk to the people that can provide you advice. Because often it's not a no, it's a not now or not yet. So keep that in mind and keep coming back. So with that, I'm going to close the session. I have a couple of comments, but thank you to the speakers. I know a couple of our speakers had to disappear, but I will say just a couple of things really, really quickly. So first of all, Mary, I'll put this idea in your ear. It's something that came to me a little while ago, but could we maybe talk about working with the Asper School of Business about a micro-credential for PIs on commercialization of science? So in other words, get them in a 9-month course that they actually get a credential at the end. They don't have to go the full MBA route, but it gets them that skills and starts thinking in those areas. Maybe something we can talk to the leadership there about developing if it's not already in the works, and it may well be, I don't know. To get people who don't think about this stuff to learn how to speak that language and think in that way. So I'll just put the bug in your ear.
So I'll respond very quickly.
Sure, yeah.
That's what the Stu Clark Center is all about in NASPER. But the whole point you're trying to make is you have to get PhDs together with business students, right? And MBAs. And some of the best companies come out from that combination. So it's difficult to do it in isolation. So absolutely, the deans of the respective faculties are looking at exactly this. How you can partner. It may not be a formal micro-credential at this point, but they're all very interested. So they're all going to use Ideas Start as the hub to bring those people together, right? But it's very true, you know. My students are flying in their companies today, but it started off with a PhD student coming together with a business student and developing an idea, a business plan, then getting feedback from all the different organizations and then going forward. But it's, if you look at the space station, the desalination mechanism for all the water was invented by one of our student companies. They started off in my office, not at UM, but so it can happen, but you need all that ancillary expertise around you, right? So.
Thank you. Thank you, Mary. I'm a big believer in communication to break down barriers, getting people together who otherwise wouldn't have the opportunity to meet, kind of like what we tried to do here today, and get different perspectives. I suspect one of the initial spinoffs from that will not only be better trained people, but actual collaborations that lead to market initiatives, simply because you get people talking and thinking differently now. So I hope everyone found this event to be informative, and I encourage you to reach out to today's speakers if you have follow-up questions based on what you've heard. There's a lot of information out there that you can find, but sometimes even knowing where to start looking can be challenging. So ask questions and think broadly. The road to translation commercialization is long. It's challenging, but there's a lot of support available. Often the problem is figuring out where that support is and how do you take advantage of it. And you heard some of the supports that are available today. There's a lot more support now than there ever has been in the past. This is something that's really a major driver around the world, and we're seeing serious money being put behind these initiatives. And remember that you don't have to do this alone. In fact, you cannot do this alone. You will need to collaborate and partner with other people. So I'd like to thank the individual presenters who've given generously of their time and shared their knowledge and experience. It was really tremendously appreciated. Thank you to the audience for attending and for your attention. I'd like to thank Rael Lopez and Karen Swans for a lot of logistical support in pulling this all together, including a lot of discussions with Bram as well. Thank you to Rob Blake, who's in the back room there, for taking care of all the AV service, and Karen Hebert, who runs our communications unit here. And with that, I'd ask one favor. Please send me an email after this with feedback. What worked, what didn't work, and more importantly, what are the ideas you'd like to see explored in future symposia? Because we'd like to do this again, maybe in the fall, with another slate of speakers to start to move this conversation forward as we go on. So thank you very much and have a great day.